Good evening. I would like to call to order this Anoka-Hennepin School Board meeting for today, December 9th, 2024. Please join the board in pledging our allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first order of business is to approve the board agenda. Is there a motion to approve the board agenda as presented? So moved. Thank you, Director Langenfeld. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Director DeShane. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the board agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. With 6 in favor and 0 opposed, the agenda is approved. Members, our next order of business is item 4, Finance, and item 4A, our Truth in Taxation public hearing. Welcome, Michelle Vargas, Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, Chair Arco, Superintendent McIntyre, members of the board. Tonight we have our Truth in Taxation hearing as the last item before we approve the payable 2025 taxes. Tonight this is a hearing required by statute. It is required to be held within a public meeting between November 25th and December 30th after 6 p.m. Can be part of a regular school meeting. Used to be it had to be separate, so that's why that's always stated. And then we must allow for public comments. So once we go through the presentation, we'll stop. There are special green cards, I believe, for public comment. And then after that portion, we'll come back to approve the proposed tax levy. You're also required to talk about the current year budget. Although this is not for the current year budget, it's part of statute and what they require you to do. Other taxing authorities, the tax process aligns to their budget approval. So tonight within the hearing, we'll have background information on school district funding. We'll talk about the current school district budget. We'll talk about the proposed taxes for payable 2025 that fund our 25-26 school year, and then we will open for public comment. The Minnesota legislature sets and is required to make provisions to fund school districts. So our school district, the taxation is based in statute and required by the Minnesota legislature. As a result of this funding, it is highly regulated. The formulas are determined and the revenue. Their revenues are mostly based on per pupil amounts. The tax policy is determined for schools. The maximum authority, we cannot levy more, we can levy less. The only way we can levy more is by vote in November for our voters. The state allows the school board to submit referendums for operating capital needs also to the voters. Just a background, the general education formula, which is the majority of our funding. If you were to look at the general formula and take it from 2003 to 2025, had we kept pace with inflation, we would have $1,364 more on the formula. So in the last biennium, we had 4% the first year, 2% the second year. At that point, we're still 18.7% below inflation had we kept pace. That $1,300 would raise another $56 million for the school district if we were to take that out. The other area in school district funding, the cross-subsidy. There's always the talk about the cross-subsidy. In the last legislative session, they made a significant investment when the projection was $726 million across the state for the cross-subsidy. It's still projected to be at $455 million at the end of 2027. The school district, again, we had a $47 million cross-subsidy at the end of 2023. The 2024 one will go down because of that funding. We won't know about it until next May, the exact amount. It's probably projected to be about 15 to 17 million less based on the additional revenue that we got, but we'll still be in the $30 million range probably when we get that finalized in May. The budget information that you're going to see is based on our current budget that we're in. Our next budget that this funds will be the one that we have to adopt by June of 2025. The school district has several funds that we track, so when you adopt that budget, we have the general fund, our food service fund, the community service fund, our building construction fund, we have debt service, our internal service fund, and then we have our OPEB debt and trust. So our current budget, this is the form that we're used to require to report out and publish in the paper in November. This form is used. The far right columns are our current budget. The left columns show our fiscal year 24 that we finished the actual amounts. So the current year budget is a $717 million revenue budget and a $742 expenditure budget that was adopted back in June of 2024. Our revenues by funds. The general fund is our largest fund. That is what funds our K-12 regular programs. It is 89% of what we do and $641 million. You can see that our community service fund and our food service funds are the next closest. They're both about 30 million and about 4% of our overall budget each. When you look at our general fund, our largest fund, the majority of our funding is state funding. That's why when we talk about the legislature, we rely very heavily on the state funding. That's almost 77%. We are now back down to kind of the regular federal dollars we've received prior to COVID funds, where we receive about 2% of our funding is federal, or almost 14 million. Our local funding, which includes the property tax, then there would be other miscellaneous fees and revenues that we bring in, the majority of that being property taxes at 20% of our funding. When we look at our expenditure funds in the general fund by object code is the type. So our salaries and wages and our employee benefits, that's our compensation. We always talk about we are a people business. It's people in front of students. That's 81% of what we do. The next largest area that you'll see is our purchase services. Within our purchase services, that's where our transportation contracts are, which is another large area. And that area is almost 10% of our budget. You can see that our administration and district services, whoops, I'm on the next one then. I'm sorry. Next one. By program level, when you look at a program level and you're asked about where you spend it, the regular instruction, vocational speech, our special ed, and our instructional support, those are direct. When we say direct student support, those four categories, when they look at profiles and they talk about spending 70%, we're over 70% that go into the direct instruction. Our district support services are 2.3%. That would be business, finance, HR, student accounting. Your administration, the 2.3%, is your principals, your superintendent's office, to give you how those are broken down. Sites and buildings, that's 73 million or 11%. That's a lot of our construction, LTFM, in addition to operations, which is just your custodial and your utilities. So that kind of covers the budget portion of where we're at this year. Now looking at just the tax levy in general. A change in tax levy doesn't determine necessarily a change in budget because we're funded by taxes and we're funded by state aid. And sometimes what will happen is that there's a shift depending on your tax, the calculations, the formulas, and your tax base. When your tax base increases, you sometimes may still be getting the same amount of money. It's just a change between levy and aid. And that's just to understand every formula. There's a lot there, but just because your tax is going up doesn't necessarily mean the district is receiving more money. As mentioned earlier, there is a difference in levy cycles. The school district budget cycle is a July 1 to June 30th. So our 25 taxes are going to be revenue for our 25-26, which that budget will be adopted in June of 2025. Cities and counties that are also having truth in taxation hearings, they are adopting their budget. Their 2025 taxes are funding their 2025 calendar year. So it's a difference in how we present. It's a little different for school districts when this is really for our next budget cycle. This is just a sample of what anybody pretty much received on their property taxes. Looking at it, that each owner of a property is going to receive this statement showing the different jurisdictions. The only part that I will be speaking to tonight is the school district portion on that, and basically to understand it, that your taxes may go up or go down based on your city or your county. A school district tax, a $100,000 house in any one of our municipalities is going to have the same school district taxes, because our tax rates on a home value are the same wherever they're located. What changes your taxes from your overall are going to be your other jurisdictions. So when we talk about what tonight, our portion is the same for every school or every parcel within our school district boundaries. Each school district has limited authority to levy taxes, which is different than a city and a county. As an elected board, you don't get to set a tax rate based on a budget. These are all set in state statute, in law, or by voter approval. That's what is going to be presented before you from the totals. The tax process starts with the county assessor or city assessor that is determining the market values of each parcel. Next slide, thank you. The legislature sets the formula for tax capacity and school district levy limits. The county auditor calculates tax capacity for each parcel and the total tax capacity for each school district. The Minnesota Department of Education calculates our detailed levy limits in each school district based on the formulas approved by the legislature. Step 5, which is your portion, is to set the levy and approve it. Then it'll go back to the county auditors, which will then divide the final levy and collect it, and then turn it back to the jurisdictions. The approval process was back in September. MDE came out with our final levy limits. That's when you did the preliminary approval in September on the 23rd. In mid-November, so just a few weeks ago, the proposed tax statements were mailed out by the county auditors. This is our public hearing tonight that's required. We will do public comment, and then following that hearing, you will be asked to approve the full limit of the proposed tax levy. So the proposed tax levy for 2025 is a decrease from our 2024 levy by almost 1.7 million, or 1.2% reduction. The changes by levy categories and reasons for major increases and decreases are on the following slides, which is a requirement of the hearing. This shows our overall tax levy by fund. As you can see, the general fund is a decrease of 1.8 million, or minus 1.5%. Our community service fund is an increase of 9%. Even though that is a 9% increase, it's a small portion of our levy. We continue to see increases in our school age care area. So those are our special education students that are in after school age care, and the cost of providing the services there. Our debt service is a decrease of 1.6%, or $250,000. Overall, the voter-approved levy is going down by 2.5 million over the previous year, and the other, which are all the other items that are listed by comment, by category, are going up 852,000. So our major changes in the general fund, the voter-approved operating referendum is going up 550,000. This is a voter-approved revenue referendum that grows with annual inflation. So if there's inflation, just like on the general ed formula, you're going to see that increase. The increase is also being offset because of our estimate, our declining enrollment. So what we had levied at last year was prior to our October 1, and we had a lower one last year and a lower one this year. So it is offset, the inflationary increases offset by our enrollment decrease. So it is not a full inflationary increase. Our local optional revenue, that is a flat $740 per pupil unit, has an increase of $432,000. Although it is going up that amount, due to our decrease in our enrollment, that also affects it, and then our increased tax base is reducing the levy portion. So when you look at it and you look at, we qualified for aid of almost 4 million last year. We're only getting aid of 1.6 million this year. So we lost over almost $800,000 in that shift from aid to levy. So that's when you're talking about we may not be getting more revenue, we're actually netting less revenue, but our levy is going up because of that shift. The other large prior year major change is our prior year adjustments. It's going down by 2.4 million. In fiscal year, or payable 24, we had a large increase for a catch-up on our referendum due to the big growth in inflation. So that was a one-time catch-up. We didn't have that growth for, that included that 1 year that had 7%. So they had an estimated 7. So we saw that big increase last year. We didn't see it this year. That's why we show a decrease of 2.4 million. So what factors will impact individual taxpayers for our school districts? So change in an individual property value will affect your changes in total value of property within the district will affect it. As our tax base go up, there's more to spread it on if we have new tax base. Increases or decreases in levy amounts caused by changes in funding formulas, local needs and costs, and voter-approved referendums and other factors can affect school district taxes on an individual taxpayer. Just a small, quick example. If you had a school district that had two properties, both $100,000. Your total levy was $500. They were equal. They would split that, $250 each. Now I'm looking at it. If those two properties in the district the next year, still $500 is your levy, one went up by 10%, one went up by 25%, you can see that the difference in the pay, the orange house is now going to pay less, even though their house went up 10%, but because that house that went up 25%, their tax capacity is that much more. So that's when we look at all the parcels that we have and all the different changes that each individual can have and what that can play on the values and tax impact on each individual parcel just by looking at two parcels in a single district. There was also a change in the legislative law that increased the homestead exclusion. So the homestead exclusion, it reduces your tax capacity by home values between $76,000 and $517,000, and it's graduated. It phases out as your home value reaches towards that $517,000. It used to cap out at, I believe it was $384,000. So that decreased tax capacity for many more houses as it stretched it out. So basically brought into more of an inflationary factor into that phase out to reduce tax capacity on that. There was also a change for egg homesteads, what the first tier limit is, which is usually the lower rate, and increased that from 3.5 million to 2.1 million. We have very little egg land within our school district. We're primarily homes. We're over 80% homes, and then the next area would be commercial industrial, but we are very heavily homes in our district. Do have a quick comparison that shows 4 years of our tax rates on valued homes. Then we'll also look at what has happened over the last 3 years from 2022 to 2025. Home values have went up about 29.7%. We'll kind of look at what ours, what that does to a home value from that. This is a large one. I'm not going to go over every line item, but it basically gives you residential home values, commercial, industrial, agricultural apartments, and shows that the progression from 2022, this is if your values did not change at all based on the taxes we've levied, what it was, that our taxes payable for 2025 to 2022 are all a decrease going down. That you can see over the 4 years. And then just the decrease in the far right column shows 24 to 25 that we're levying. So these are for all different types of categories within our district, what those changes and the percentages that have been levied against the homes. We have more individual looks on the next slides. So this is a home value, 150,000 and 250,000 homestead that shows no changes in their property value from 2022 to 2025. Both of them are decreases over the 4 years. It would be a $94 decrease on the 150 or 17%. And then for the $250,000 home with no change, they actually would decrease 16% over those 3 years from 2022. Looking at our average, Anoka County average value home is about $354,000, so that $350,000 is close to our average value. As you can see, that one again is about a $219 difference from 2022 to 2025 if their value didn't change, or minus 16%. The $550,000 home also decreases about $329 over those years, or a 15% decrease. Now, if you take those and then take the average increase in homes in the district at 29%, they're using 6%, 20% the first year, 6%, and then what we saw was about a 2% this past year on our tax base. Seeing that progression, the $150,000 house did grow by $45 or 11%. So their taxes went up 11%, but their home value went up 29.7%. Similar for a $250,000 house, the growth from 192 up to 250, the taxes went up $75, about 10%, again with a 29.7% increase. So your increase in your home value doesn't necessarily mean that that's your increases in your taxes, because there are so many different things that are going on. Looking at the $350,000 residential home, there you're looking at an increase of $107 over the 3 years, or 10%. Even the past year, it's about a $28 increase. A decrease actually, or 2.4%. That's showing that we're down 1.2%. So on a $350,000 house, and that increase in the homestead exclusion that we previously talked about is going to affect those homes. Again, the $550,000 house is an increase of $184 over all those years, or 11%. $22 decrease just to the prior year, or 1.18%. Within the state of Minnesota, there are 2 property tax refunds that people can apply for. The homestead credit, based on your taxes, and there is an income threshold. The special property tax refund, there's no income threshold, but it does need to be an increase of 12% or over $100. There's also a senior citizen property tax deferral that are all available with the Minnesota Department of Revenue. So at this point, I would have the board to open it up for public comments, or any questions you have before you do that.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Director Simon?
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Michelle. I just wanted to make a comment that, at least for me, how you format and present this information just gets clearer and clearer every year. So I think this is just outstanding on how you presented it and the examples that you gave. And I guess just one comment then. I mean, this matches up with what I show in Coon Rapids, where I own a home. You know, my city taxes went up, my county taxes went up. The only place my taxes went down were in the school district part. And when I look at this average house, it's almost exactly what you say here, what I saw on my tax statement of what it went down, like from last year to this year, like I think it was like $50 to $60 down. So it just matches up perfectly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, okay. Yep. Hearing none, we will move on to item 4B, our next portion of our truth in taxation public hearing to allow for public testimony. I do have one green card currently, and if anybody else would like to speak, go ahead and fill out a green card. Otherwise, Jody Anderson, if you'd like to come up and make a comment.
I have a lot of props. I'll have to get ready. I even brought a piano. Dear school board members and Superintendent McIntyre, my name is Jody Anderson. I live down the street here. I am an Anoka-Hennepin retired teacher. I taught in the district 30 years. I'm here to talk about the value of our schools. Here are my thoughts for a district many teachers have invested for many years. Our school system deserves nice things. Previously, board members, we have built wonderful football fields, large auditoriums, beautiful libraries, and more physical spaces that have enhanced our students' learning experience. And our communities enjoyment of their talents and people. Some people are saying we need to go back to the basics. I ask, at what cost? Does it mean eliminating some or all of these programs? Does it mean that we don't support the students in ways that stimulate their creativity, athleticism? I got the jacket for this. Readers and appreciation of differences. Readers and mathematicians enhance their creativity by participating in music, art, and athletics. I will share my personal experience. My husband is a mathematician. He started his professional career as a loft engineer for McDonnell Douglas. He continued his career in the defense industry, along with being an active and a reserve naval officer for over 30 years. Did his math background help him succeed? Yes, along with many other skills like determination and cooperation gained through participation in athletics and innovation and creativity gained through music and the arts. His writing skills and ability to mentor others are equally beneficial to the organizations that develop and use a technology that defends our country. He writes military proposals. As a retiree, I need good plumbers and electricians who can communicate well. I need healthcare providers that have empathy and understanding, things that must be taught through the humanities courses. Our community and our country does well when we have strong schools and that attract good teachers and retain them, along with having programs in place that make a difference and keep students in school. Ask students what they love about their school. It is often unmeasurable things like friendships, music, theater, art, and sports. We build programs that ensure students continue to learn, grow, and graduate with multiple skills and keep them in our schools. In District 11, we can do educate students by supporting them. The district completed a survey, so you know the citizens are likely to support a levy. Not a certainty, but it is important to ask them. Education is an investment that promises great returns. Failing to invest now would tear down what has taken years to build. I believe we need to partner with the community and encourage them to say yes to a school district that builds for the future and a responsible vision for everyone. Thank you.
And thank you for your comment. So we will keep moving on to our next part. Item 4C, final tax certification for taxes payable in 2025. Welcome again, Ms. Vargas.
Thank you, Chair Arco, Superintendent McIntyre, members of the board. So what I have before you is for approval, the pay 2025 tax levy at $138,286,962.
All right, are there any questions for Ms. Vargas? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the final tax certification for taxes payable in 2025 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Simon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Langenfeld. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Will all those in favor say aye? Aye. Any opposed say nay. All right, with 6 in favor and 0 opposed, the levies, the final tax certification is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, members, the next item on our agenda is item 5, the consent agenda. As normal, members can remove items for separate consideration and discussion if that is their desire. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Simon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director DeShane. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will all those in favor say aye? Aye. Any opposed say nay. With 6 in favor and 0 opposed, our consent agenda is approved. And that brings us to our next agenda item, which is item 6, the communications, delegations, and petition section of our meeting. This is time for community members to provide input directly to the school board about issues that fall within the school board's authority. We plan this agenda item for 15 minutes. Our policy allows for community members to speak for up to 5 minutes, but if there are several persons that want to speak, the chair has the discretion to reduce the time to comment to hear from all and also keep the meeting on schedule. During times of large community input, we have been flexible in allowing the meeting to run late. Tonight we have 12 cards. To keep the meeting on time, I will ask individuals to keep their comments to 2 minutes. I will ask Co-Chair DeShane to monitor a timer, and if you run over your time, she will ask you to wrap up your comments quickly. We welcome your written testimony if you have more to say than time allows. Please, and if anybody else would like to speak, please complete a yellow card and provide it to Ms. Kofsky so we can provide a written follow-up. A couple of procedural reminders. Our meeting participation procedures are in place to ensure open and orderly public comments, as well as to protect the due process and privacy rights of individuals under the law. If speakers use specific names of students, staff, or board members, I will need to interrupt or stop the speaker. Please remember to direct your comments to the school board chair. Members of the audience, please listen respectfully. If the board cannot hear speakers, I may reset the timer to allow speakers to be heard. Audience members that disrupt this portion may be asked to leave for the remainder of the meeting. All right, with all of that being said, our first speaker tonight is Roxanne Tersteeg. Sorry if I mispronounced the last name. Yep, right up here.
Okay, I'm here to talk on behalf of a friend of mine for the last 15 plus years. And we met in this school where he was principal. And through those years, my 2 youngest kids of my 4 sons excelled under his principalship. The school had an atmosphere of achievement that it spread everywhere. It was very palpable. And while he was here, I believe that this middle school, Sandburg, scored the highest in the district for testing results and stuff. Check me if I'm wrong. I don't know. So of course this was the school that they repurposed, which made everybody heartbroken. But he ended up going to Jackson Middle School that had a lot of problems, and he was kind of the fixer there. He's good at what he does, and he did a great job there. Came back here to Fred Moore, which needed some fixing also. And so he keeps getting moved around. Everywhere that I've seen him through all these years, he has been fabulous. Right now, I work over at, for the district for the Department of Transportation, and my friend comes out a few times during the year and says, you know, how's it going over here? Because even though I'm not his direct supervision, whatever, he cares about everybody who works within the perimeter, whoever works on the
Conclude your remarks.
campus.
Thank you. Your time's just about up. Please conclude your remarks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
He's a great man. And then one of the things he told me this year was, we were talking about a kid who was just causing a lot of problems in my area. And he said some of the kids who need love the most ask for it in the most unloving way. And I thought, that man should be protected and considered to the full extent that you have available to you, so you don't lose really, really excellent, good people.
Thank you for your
And I'm pretty
time.
sure they're going to say it too. So,
Thank you for your
thank you.
comments. Next up, we have Eric Nace. Again, sorry if I mispronounced the last name.
Superintendent McIntyre and members of the board, my name's Eric Ness. My wife and kids, my wife and I have lived in Anoka 33 years. My 3 kids went to Fred Moore and graduated from Anoka High School, and I now have the privilege of teaching at Fred Moore. Teaching, as you probably heard, is more challenging than it's ever been. I entered my 35th year in the classroom this fall, and on the 6th day of school was assaulted by a student, punched over 20 times. This evening, I'm still dealing with a severe concussion, have had a constant headache since September 10th, can only work 4 hours a day, and have been juggling weekly medical appointments since September. I started counting up all the administrators that I've worked for over the years, and I struggled coming up with a number. But what I am sure of, concussion and all, is that none of them could have supported me more than the man that this woman just spoke about. On the day that I was assaulted, he personally escorted me out of the building prior to the end of the school day, wanting to make sure that I exited the building safely. He offered to drive me home, made sure that I had his personal phone number, and told me to call him anytime if I needed anything. The kind of violent behavior that I endured at school is becoming too common. There were multiple fights at our school last week. Experiencing this assault has been difficult for me, but I've only had to deal with one of these fights this year. To be fair, I've only been teaching part-time since the second week of school, so I've missed many of them. But you know who has dealt with every conflict, every fight, every altercation involving every student in the building? Our administrative team. And I say team intentionally. This teamwork, mindset, and leadership that I've witnessed is without question the finest administrative team that I've worked with in 3.5 decades. Our building has radically been shaken since this irreplaceable team has been dismantled. They support all teachers, all students, and it's an incredible daunting task keeping everyone safe in a 24 school environment. I've witnessed fair, kind treatment to students and staff, and it's a very difficult balance that I've only seen one other administrator in the tenure of my education. I'm going to wrap it up right now. Knowing what I know about the culture and climate of Fred Moore on a day-to-day basis, if my own children were still in middle school today and they were led by the administrative team that started the school year, I would be 100% comfortable sending them here. However, if they were not, I think I would seek another location for my own children to attend school. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Next up is Shannon Fox.
Hello, my name is Shannon Fox, and I have been at the AMSA Fred Moore campus for the past 2 years. In my 28 years of teaching, I have never worked in such a warm, compassionate, caring environment as I have under the original 2024 leadership. The leadership that created a culture, a family that thrived for both students and staff. The undignified removal of the head of our original leadership has been detrimental to our school. As teachers, administrators, and other staff of public schools, we are constantly being put in front of all kinds of kids. There is always a risk that a student is going to become volatile and act on impulsive actions. As educators, we must be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of our students and surrounding staff when situations present themselves, knowing that we will be supported by our district and given a fair due process that involves open, upfront communication, an opportunity for explanation, and a cooperative investigation of events. A lack of any of those things is unfair, unjust, and undignified to its staff. As educators, we are told that if we perceive a student has made a mistake, we are to always listen. When mistakes do happen, especially first-time mistakes, students have an opportunity to explain themselves, to face consequences that equal the offense, learn from their actions, and then are fully restored to the classroom with a fresh start. However, staff are not given the same courtesy. We must be. Anything less is hypocritical. If students were treated with the same process that staff are treated with when there is a perceived issue, parents would be in an uproar. One could argue that the difference is that they are kids and we are adults. No, it isn't about the age, but about the system. The system is flawed and currently unjust, unfair, undignified, and hypocritical. The future of education is tenuous, at best. And if you let bad student behavior dictate district reaction, there will be no ability to counter the tidal wave of what's to come.
Please conclude your remarks.
Fear and placation should not guide intelligent reaction. Teachers, administrators, staff need protection against increasing bad student behaviors. Show that the district can support its staff. Restore our leadership at AMSA so that it can once again thrive under a caring, compassionate, dedicated leader, one who gave 30+ years to students in both heart and spirit, who deserves to be treated with the same respect we give students, even the most volatile. Then work on fixing a broken system. I am presenting with you a packet of letters written by AMSA staff members. Please carefully read with the understanding that we are all working toward what is best for our students.
Thank you for your comments. Next up is Mickey Paul.
Thank you for this opportunity tonight, Superintendent McIntyre and School Board. My name is Mickey Paul, and I am an ESL teacher at Anoka Middle School. I started my teaching career in Anoka-Hennepin 19 years ago. I am here tonight to talk about the current climate in our building due to the changes in leadership. And the big part of that is to tack on to what everybody else is saying tonight about the change in leadership and how much effect that has had on us. I am asking for the positions to be restored to the additional roles that were assigned at the beginning of the school year. Prior to MEA this year, Anoka Middle School was one school with two well-functioning buildings. The buildings were both united, yet unique in their own ways. There was a well-established leadership team that created a highly functioning and positive environment for both students and staff. Everyone was aware of the expectations. Consistency was the key for our daily routine. Students were making connections with staff, knew the expectations, and were held to high standards. They were supported and provided with a positive learning environment, and the priority was what is best for kids. Our leadership team worked with staff to make it a reality. It was the best start to the school year that I can remember in my entire career. Upon returning from the MEA break, the routine of the students and staff in both buildings was shattered by the shifting of leadership positions. Currently, neither building is being supported as needed. Those in leadership positions are being forced to not only adjust their roles or buildings, but to take additional responsibilities as well. They are being spread too thin and pushed beyond the limits. Our
Please
previously
conclude your remarks.
Thank you. Our previously strong team has been deeply affected. The staff are trying to support the students and help them navigate a new routine. At the same time, we are trying to not overwhelm the already stretched leadership. Simultaneously, we must all hide our own emotions and stress that have been caused by these changes. This is not what is best for anyone. Our students trust us to do what's best for them. They need consistency and to feel they can depend on the adults in the building.
Thank you for coming.
Suddenly so much is gone. Just please do what's best for our kids and make us whole again, and please restore our leadership back to the way it was so we can continue doing what's best for our students. Thank you for your time.
comment. Next up is Carissa Simonet.
Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent McIntyre. My name is Carissa Simonet, and I'm a math teacher at Anoka Middle School for the Arts. Over the past weeks, I have wondered how to describe the impact of the loss of our principal at AMSA. Please allow me to briefly remind you of a news report entitled "Miracle on the Hudson" that comes to my mind while at work every day. On January 15, 2009, the Airbus A320 was struck by a flock of birds shortly after takeoff from LaGuardia and lost all engine power. The pilots, Sully Sullenberger and Jeffrey Skiles, decided to glide the plane to ditching on the Hudson River. All 155 people on board were rescued by nearby boats, and there were no fatalities. The time from the bird strike to the landing was less than 4 minutes. It has been described as the most successful ditching in aviation history. Our principal in September of 2024 at AMSA is R. Scully. His co-pilots are our assistant principals at both Washington and Fred Moore campuses. This team only works when all pilots are in the cockpit. A safe landing is in jeopardy without their combined leadership efforts. It takes experience to react appropriately in the moment and ensure the safety of everyone who is dependent upon your choices. Our principal had the experience. He had the hours of training and the heart that enabled a teamwork approach to education at AMSA. You may hear safety should not be dependent upon one person. Tell that to the passengers of Flight 1549. Experience cannot be replaced.
Please conclude your remarks.
The methodologies our principal employed were systemic and consistently centered around student and staff safety. Incidents of violence in school were significantly reduced. Time spent in classrooms engaged in learning without distractions increased exponentially. Without his presence, safety violations have steadily climbed again.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next up is Thomas Haggerty.
Good evening, school board members. My name is Thomas Haggerty. I'm currently a school counselor and coach in Anoka-Hennepin schools. Tonight I speak to you not only as a son of an administrator, but someone who has been threatened that if I speak tonight, it would be falling on deaf ears. That would be making the situation worse. I know that's not true. It's no secret that our schools have seen an increase in aggressive behavior. I myself have been put in positions where I faced a decision to either intervene to protect students and staff from being severely hurt or let the student continue the behavior. Up until this recent decision, I would always intervene without hesitation. Not anymore. I've had zero training on restraining students. I've had zero training on breaking up fights. I've had zero communication from the district on what our role is when these situations happen. But what I do know is we need people to be willing to intervene. We need people to be willing to keep our students safe. We need people to be willing to keep our staff safe. We need principals who are willing to keep our schools safe. And with that, I know our principals have our backs, have their employees' backs, but who has theirs? What is the threshold to putting a staff member on non-disciplinary leave for protecting staff and students? Apparently, non-disciplinary paid leave means no access to email, no communication to coworkers. Coworkers are told not to communicate with them. You even lose access to be able to view your pay stubs. No one checks in with you. You are completely and totally isolated, and they may not have even started the investigation yet. As a school counselor, in my professional opinion, this is extremely disturbing, concerning, and that a school district would do this to an employee, especially one who they know and have trusted to serve and lead our schools and community for 20+ years. I don't ever wish an employee in this district goes through this again for protecting the safety of students and staff. That is why it's so important to get these questions answered and put out to our community, to our schools, and employees. What is the threshold to putting staff on paid non-disciplinary leave prior to investigating for protecting other students and staff? Why is it that people put on paid non-disciplinary leave are treated poorly, isolated, and lose access to things like their email and pay stubs?
Please conclude your remarks.
Put them back where he belongs.
Thanks for your comment. The next speaker is Mariah Haggerty. Next speaker is Mariah Haggerty.
Hi. My dad was recently put through a humiliating process by district leaders during what they referred to as a non-disciplinary paid leave. My dad wasn't allowed to communicate with anyone for weeks. Trying to keep him busy, I brought him to an Anoka volleyball game. Come to find out, our leaders were no longer allowing him on any district property. My dad had to then get permission to go cheer me on as I coached at the state volleyball tournament. He has lived and worked in this community for more than 30 years, and yet our leaders told him that he had to stay away from this community. That doesn't seem extreme enough. District leaders then used me bringing my dad to that volleyball game as a reason why he does not get to return to Anoka Middle School. I was told at a substitute training here that during aggressive behavior that they want to be able to see us on cameras trying to stop it. This district has not trained me on those situations, and yet I'm expected as a substitute to handle them. I subbed for a teacher who was out because he was hit multiple times in the head by a student. This is the behavior we are dealing with. And instead of helping us learn what to do, and no, that doesn't mean a slideshow of do's and don'ts, our leaders are pulling up school cameras, watching the teachers' actions, and then deciding that we have to fight to keep our jobs and our license. Teachers no longer feel comfortable intervening with behaviors because they fear for their careers. Now our students are less safe due to decisions by our leaders. My dad was willing to intervene in order to protect his staff, students, and himself. And because of this, and also because he went to that volleyball game with his daughter, he was thrown out and treated so poorly. And I believe leadership knows this is wrong. My dad isn't allowed to communicate with anyone, not allowed on district property. His staff aren't able to get answers or communication. My brother was even facing threats for wanting to communicate and speak about this tonight. Someone is so worried that they felt the need to reach out to a person's child and threaten them in hopes that they would convince them not to speak tonight. Clearly, there is something wrong going on here, and certain people are trying very hard so you all don't hear about it. No matter what our leaders do to harm my dad's career and reputation, I will be proud to have his last name of Haggerty. And that's 100% due to who my dad is. I am disgusted with what is happening, and no matter how many threats my family receives, I will continue to speak up and spread awareness to this community and beyond. Something needs to change, and that starts with getting my dad back at that school and who we have in leadership roles. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jody Anderson. The next speaker is Jody Anderson. Oh, okay, so you spoke on the truth in taxation. The next speaker is Darcy Steinberg.
Hello, I'm a parent of 2 in the AH district. I'm also an educator in a different district. I'm here tonight to plead with the school board to reinstate the principal at AMSA, Fred Moore. The male principal is a vital component of AMSA, and it was because of this principal that provides a welcoming community and open communication updates, unlike the current female leadership, and has a genuine care for connections with students. He has high standards for all students. He wants the students to be in the school, and he does his utmost best to provide every student with a high quality education they deserve. Not only does the principal make the students feel welcome in the school, but he shares that same sentiment with parents. The climate was warm, caring, positive, and is abundantly clear that the staff that work with the principal are excited and happy to go to work. Well, at least they were. Which says a lot, since we all know how challenging middle school can be, and not just for the staff, but for students too. Being an educator, I've worked the full spectrum of students from elementary, middle, and high, and administratively. I know how tough the job can be, not just from the staff perspective, but from the student and administrative level. I know how hard the job is, how unrealistic the expectations, how challenging the climate inside the building and outside the building too, but the importance and happiness of the staff and students is not something one can find in every building. It takes time and effort to develop, and the principal has become a staple, the figurehead, so to say, of AMSA. When you think of it, you think of that principal. Not only does he have an incredible connection with the students and staff, he's genuinely excited to share what's going on in the building and things to look forward to. Because as a parent, although I cannot speak for all parents, I do know hormonal pubescent students do not exactly go out of their way to share information about their day outside of the guttural good or meh. The principal is able to and does give the parents communication, and that way we can also support our students in the overall community of the school.
Please conclude your remarks.
From a parent perspective, and you'll hear my son, you need to have people who actually care about the students, and the one that's currently there does not. And I do definitely miss the hello AMSA parents and families. This is your principal with an update. We don't get those calls. There's been no communication at all from anybody at the school or the district outside of an email that came out. And that's not fair to the students, nor is it fair to the staff, and it's not fair to parents. We are part of the community.
Thank you for
coming. Involve us.
Thank you for your comments. Next up is Liam Steinberg.
Hello, I am Liam Steinberg, a 7th grader at AMSA Fred Moore, and I'm trying to get the former principal in the beginning of the school year, as of this year and last year, to try to come back to Fred Moore because they've just been there for a lot of students and he's understood them and will advocate for them, and he does a lot for them. And the current principal at AMSA, and I have heard this from other students, and I also have been included in this, that the current principal has done unnecessary suspensions and in the district guidebook, which my mom, you're good, keep going, which my mom had printed out. The current principal skipped a bunch of things.
But, you can continue speaking, just try not to defame the current principal, please.
just keep going, honey. Start here.
Ever since the former principal has left the school, the community changed into absolute chaos. The school is less welcoming. Administration is not communicative, nor makes me feel safe, welcome, or a person who I can seek out if I'm struggling. I don't know what happened with the principal, nor do I need to know. AMSA Fred Moore needs him back. The students of AMSA Fred Moore need the principal back, and I need the principal back. I want my 8th grade year to start as strong as my 7th. That can only happen with him as the principal. Please bring him back.
Thank you for coming.
And restore the school.
Next up is Dennis Gable. Dennis Gable.
Good evening. Good evening, directors. Good evening, Superintendent McIntyre. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you. My comments will be brief. My name is Dennis Gable. My students call me Albert. I think it has more to do with my hairstyle than my IQ. Please excuse my comments if they tend to move in the direction of factoring a quadratic equation or proving triangles congruent. I spend my days standing in front of math students, as I have done for almost half a century. I have worked in many of the Anoka-Hennepin schools and was recently a full-time teacher at Jackson Middle School. I want you to know that I always felt safe when going into an Anoka-Hennepin school. I never, ever felt threatened. I could talk about those days, but I won't. I could talk about my days spent as a local EA president, working with school board members like you for many, many years, but I won't. I could talk about my very, very close relationship with a former Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, a man that I grew up with and admired for many years, but I won't. My purpose this evening is closer to my heart.
Please begin concluding your remarks.
I am a local resident, a taxpayer, a voter, and most importantly, a grandparent of 3 former Anoka Middle School students who were so proud and boasted about their teachers and their experiences at Anoka Middle School. I am here this evening speaking as a grandpa.
Thank you for coming, and if you can leave your remarks with Ms. Kofsky so we could read them as well.
It has recently come to my attention that a highly respected principal of Anoka Middle School, a principal that I worked for.
If you could please conclude your thoughts. Can you please conclude your thoughts? We're at time.
Okay. Has been removed from his position. I'm a very involved grandparent. I value the education of all grandchildren. I also value their safety in school. There was a time when the safety of children and staff at Anoka-Hennepin was the #1 concern of teachers and administrators. I felt that. My wife was an Anoka-Hennepin teacher for 27 years. I never worried about her being injured by one of her students. I don't worry about my own physical or emotional safety, or the emotional and physical safety of my grandchildren, other students or staff at any Anoka-Hennepin school. It appears, however, that times may have, unfortunately, changed.
Sir, how much longer do you have?
Oh, just a little bit. I'm almost
Can
done.
you conclude your remarks, please?
In fact, I'll eliminate some of the comments that aren't necessary.
Thank
And I'll
you.
go right to the most important ones. The principal I'm talking about is an experienced veteran of educational leadership, and I respect that. He understands the unique demographics of Anoka Middle School. He is able to anticipate and intervene appropriately because of his experience, and I hope that everyone sitting before me would respond in exactly the same manner when faced with the possibility of a student being injured. The community, the students, the staff, and yes, even the Anoka-Hennepin School Board needs his level of exceptional leadership. As a grandparent, I am deeply concerned for the emotional and physical safety of Anoka Middle School students, grandchildren, and staff. It is the primary responsibility of the Anoka-Hennepin School Board to ensure the safety and well-being of all students. The only fix is to reinstate this individual as principal of Anoka Middle School for the Arts. Thank you for giving me this time.
Next up is Richard B. I can't really read the last name. Richard B.
My name is Richard Balthazar.
Okay, thank you.
I do traffic control around some of the schools, part-time. I can tell you, on one hand, how many people I've met in my lifetime. I'm 70 years old, almost 71, that have gotten my attention because of the outstanding things I see on a daily basis. And we know who I'm talking about. You don't meet that many people in your lifetime that move you. I had an educator who saw I had a problem, and that fella is now the principal of the school I graduated from, or was. He's retired. And we stayed in touch for 40 years. This individual is that kind of a person. I've never met anyone so compassionate, so intelligent, so sharp, hitting on all cylinders. I was touched. I can't tell you the last time I said the Pledge of Allegiance. Those last 6 words, with liberty and justice for all. The only justice is that man back at where he belongs. Thank you.
Next up is Jean Sorensen. Jean Sorensen.
Good evening, Superintendent McIntyre and members of our school board. My name is Jean Sorensen. I'm a graduate of this school district. I attended this district from kindergarten through 12th grade. My own two children are students at Andover High School. They've attended this district since kindergarten. So I speak to you as a parent, as a graduate. I speak to you as an employee. I started my teaching career in this district in the 1995-96 school year at Roosevelt Middle School. So do the math, I've been teaching for 30 years. Back at Roosevelt Middle School, I had the pleasure to make an acquaintance of many, many fine administrators, one of whom was a young budding AP at the time. And over the years, I had the pleasure of watching him grow into many leadership positions and grow into one of the most respected administrators known in the Twin Cities area. Now, I'm going to stop talking about him for a second. I'm going to talk about restorative justice. Wikipedia defines restorative justice as an approach to justice that aims to repair the harm done. In doing so, practitioners work to ensure that offenders are able to take responsibility for their actions, to understand the harm they have caused, and to give them an opportunity to redeem themselves. Type restorative justice into the Anoka-Hennepin webpage on your district-issued computer. Restorative justice is outlined in our anti-bullying and anti-harassment task force reports. Restorative justice is outlined in our World's Best Workforce report. Again, a key component of restorative justice is that the harmer is given the opportunity to repair and redeem. That can't be done when a person who has caused harm is kept away from the situation where that harm is caused.
Please conclude your remarks.
I know that I have sat in hours of training in this district on restorative justice. I know this district cares about restorative justice. I support that and I applaud that. My question to you is, why is restorative justice good enough for our students? Why are our students allowed to return to their situations and redeem and repair? Why are our distinguished staff members not allowed the same opportunity?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next agenda item is item 7, Board Calendar and District Update. Superintendent McIntyre.
Give our screen just a moment here. So to lead into my update this evening, as the screen's coming down, the winter concert season is here. And our high school and middle school music programs have been practicing in preparation for their seasonal concerts, which are ramping up now. We have a total of 62 concerts for school choirs, bands, and orchestras that are being hosted throughout the district over the upcoming weeks. Residents can find a complete listing at ahschools.us on our website. Student performers at Anoka High School and Champlain Park High School were featured as part of holiday tree lighting events in their respective cities held over the weekend. I want to take a moment to say thank you to the students involved for being such strong ambassadors for our schools and helping make those special events extra special for our community members. One of our area's newest authors is a 6th grade student at Roosevelt Middle School in Blaine. 11-year-old Hayu Siro has written his debut novel, Agent Ace, Young Spies, Hidden Powers, and a World to Save. Hayu wrote the book while he was a student at Sunrise Elementary, and where staff were there to support and motivate him through his efforts. More information and a video story from North Metro TV about his accomplishment are posted on the website. And as far as his book, that is available where you find most books. Many of you were at the Alley and Ave Chamber of Commerce ribbon cutting recently here, and we're just taking a moment to highlight that the store recently opened provides hands-on experience for students who receive special education services as part of our district's work-based learning program. TEAM, or Teaching Employability Through Assessment and Manufacturing, which is a program designed for high school students aged 18 to 22, is there for them to learn how to grow additional skills before seeking paid employment. You see some of the photos there from the shop and where they do all their work. The new location in Anoka is a part of the relocation of district programming from leased space in Andover to facilities already owned by the district. Alley and Ave is located at Sandberg Education Center here in this building in Anoka. If you enter from the Second Avenue side of the building from the alley, it's right on the corner there. And hours are Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., except on school release days, along with some periodic evening hours. I know they're in high demand here in the holiday season. Furniture donations are also welcome during operating hours. Anoka-Hennepin has been invited to share the legislative priorities developed by the school board, along with 41 school district members at the Association of Metro School Districts, or AMSD, at their legislative event set for January 10th. This presentation will include the district's advocacy positions regarding funding formulas, paid leave and unemployment, READ Act implementation and support, matters involving student safety, including kindergarten through grade 3 discipline rules. For community awareness, Dr. Michelle Langenfeld serves on the AMSD as our rep for the district. And finally, board members, tonight I'd like to invite Cindy Harris to come out from back in our studio as she comes out for a special recognition. I'm going to start talking about Cindy while she's walking in the room. I didn't know if I needed to get Debbie to go get her, but there she is, I think. Cindy is a person who takes the lead on ensuring school board meetings are shared on cable television and streaming outlets, along with her job in the district's media services department. When she began service in Anoka-Hennepin, her job was to route 16-millimeter films to schools.
That's true.
As a part of her role in the media services department. Cindy Harris brought years of school board meetings to cable television, to streaming outlets, and to ensure that residents are informed about school board actions. Tonight is her final meeting as a full-time employee, as Cindy will be retiring from Anoka-Hennepin following 41 years of service. I'm going to present you, Cindy, with the school board medallion in honor of your impact to our schools. It's hard to put into words how to say thank you, but thank you for your dedication and commitment to the school district and the community, and congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you.
And board members, if you can bring me over here. Board members can join me.
If you want to get cozy in that corner, you can, or you can come out here, whatever works best. Family's not here. Can I get one more?
Oh, one more?
You
got plenty of
Please.
Thank you.
Director Urkel, that concludes my superintendent's report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board members, are there any questions for Superintendent McIntyre? All right. Our next agenda item is Community and Government Relations. Item 8A, Volunteer Service Coordinator Model Reorganization. Welcome, Michelle Trelstad, Executive Officer of Community Education and Government Relations.
Good evening, co-chairs DeShane and Arco, Superintendent McIntyre, and directors. This evening, after further discussion and consideration from the board following the November 25th board meeting, I'm bringing a proposal forward for a reorganization of the Volunteer Services Program, which is under Community Education. This proposal would keep volunteer service coordinators, the VSCs, at the elementary level and centralize the secondary level services. Centralizing the secondary services would still allow for a positive budget impact. It would provide centralized recruitment and vetting of volunteers for secondary schools, and it would allow them to have continued access to resources and education opportunities for our booster clubs and our volunteer coaches. At the elementary level, keeping the school-based elementary services would allow for school-based recruitment of volunteers, as they do now. It would allow for the continued opportunity to build relationships with partners and building parent groups. It would allow for continued assistance with events such as Family Engagement Night. It would allow for the continued opportunity to develop relationships with staff and determine best uses of our volunteers. And it would allow for the opportunity to build relationships with our external community groups. That being said, if we did move forward with this proposal to keep our elementary services at the school level, we would be looking to make some adjustments and some changes to our elementary level. This proposal, we would want to focus on resetting the VSC role expectations and bringing more consistency to their job duties, as well as exploring some additional funding opportunities that would allow us for more consistency with these positions across the school sites. We have discussed the current structure as well as scenario 1 and scenario 2. This is just the budget layout for you to review once again. And at that point, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Director Langenfeld?
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for providing us with another opportunity or option for the volunteer service coordinator model. I think one of the important pieces that I know that we talked about at our previous meeting is just the critically important role that the volunteer service coordinators play in our schools, particularly I think at our elementaries where students are first joining the district and are welcomed in, and we have many families coming from varied backgrounds who have not had the experience in our schools. So to have that welcoming opportunity and to make those connections at the elementary level, in addition to, and you pointed it out, speaking directly to the teachers, the level of volunteer experience that and volunteers that come into our elementary schools, I think is very noteworthy. I know that we talked about the in-kind dollars that were posted last year of being over $5 million in volunteer hours. So I don't take that lightly, but I also look very carefully and reflect on the impact at the elementary level. I serve as a volunteer at one of our elementary schools, and the volunteer service coordinator goes above and beyond to greet not only parents but grandparents as well, to provide additional resource and support for our students in our schools, doing everything from making copies to all of those important tasks that keep that teacher in that classroom in front of students. So I'm very much in support of this option, and I appreciate the offset opportunity rather than making additional cuts in other spaces. Thank you.
Director DeShane.
Thank you. Just wanted to echo a few additional comments and express gratitude to my fellow board members for the continued conversations that we were able to have on this topic throughout the last few weeks as we led up to our last board meeting and until this one today. I think, I believe the connection to our community of parents and volunteers is vital to help us through this difficult financial time that we're facing. I saw firsthand during my time on the elementary school PTO board how well it works when we have a connected, high-performing, and visible person, this volunteer service coordinator in the buildings, to bring in those community members that may be brand new to our schools, brand new to our community of district opportunities. And I think that's a really valuable way for us to stay connected and to lean on that help. So just wanted to share that perspective.
Any other thoughts or comments or questions from the board?
I want to add just one thing also. I just want to assure you, as well as our schools also, that just because we are centralizing the secondary model, we have a talented team that is looking at how to best do that. We know that relationships are also very important at our middle and high schools, and so we are looking into that, and we'll make sure that that is handled appropriately also.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the volunteer service coordinator model reorganization as presented in Appendix G?
So moved.
Thank you, Director DeShane. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Director Langenfeld. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will all those in favor say aye? Aye. Any opposed say nay. All right, with 6 in favor and 0 opposed, the motion passes. Our next agenda item is item 8B, the legislative platform second read. Welcome again, Michelle Trelstad.
Thank you once again. Being this is our second read of the legislative platform, I know that we have had lots of discussion around both the content of the platform as well as the layout. So first I would like to go over the content of the platform, and then at the conclusion of that we'll go over how we made the formatting changes that we had discussed within all of our meetings. So first of all, we have 2 different areas that we landed on after discussion, and we decided to have 2 different headings. One was student behavior and support, was our first heading, and the ask that we have for our legislators under the student behavior and support, number 1 is to repeal mandates that interfere with the safety and the students of our staff, and mandates that go past and beyond our federal requirements. The second point under student behavior and support was to modify the K-3 discipline statute to provide additional time for staff and resources for parent planning, for student success, and provide funding to address the need for additional staff and space needs. That's mostly dealing with our K-3 students and the non-exclusionary discipline policy. And the third one was to maintain flexibility in the tiered licensure process to help us meet those staff shortages and those hard-to-fill positions, especially in our special education and other hard-to-fill areas. Next, those are our student behavior. Next, under our education funding, we are asking for the following. We're asking for an increase in the basic general education formula by 5%. Even though it is now linked to inflation, we know that our funding is not keeping up with our rising costs. This would offset the $26 million budget shortfall by $15 million. We're asking for additional funding to implement the READ Act. We know that we will need $3 to $5 million in curriculum and a continued need to continue to train staff. We are also asking under the funding heading to eliminate the special education and English learner cross subsidies. We know that our English learner cross subsidy is $10 million, and even though these were decreased during the last session, or 23, the education cross subsidy is still an estimated $28 million. And lastly, we're asking to provide funding to cover the cost of mandated Minnesota unemployment insurance and the paid leave programs, and refrain from passing additional unfunded mandates. Last year, the district had $2.4 million in summer unemployment claims. This amount will continue to grow, and we have heard that this funding is running out, and we will end up with a shortfall. Our paid leave is estimated to cost us between $1.9 and $2.6 million per year. So I'd like to stop there on the content area and see if there's any questions, any comments on our content.
Any questions or comments from board members? Director Simon.
Thanks. Thank you, Zach. Just one quick comment. The special ed cross subsidy, I'm glad that we put in an estimate. I did hear Michelle Vargas tonight at the Truth in Taxation said it would be $30 million. She may have just been rounding up. may be exactly 28, but I would just say, if we think it might be higher than 28, if we want to put a range in there, that might be good too.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Director Audette.
Thank you, Mr. Arco. I'd just like to talk a little bit about what we've proposed to say related to behavior and discipline. And I actually shared this with this feedback forward, but I really would like to, I guess, bring it out here publicly and advocate for some language that, in my opinion, would be less ambiguous, which I think would be needed to really communicate what we're talking about here, or at least what I think we should be talking about. So I want to advocate for wording that says that we need changes to statutes that have taken control of student behavior and discipline out of the hands of local, duly elected school boards and created unworkable, and I'm going to emphasize unworkable, restrictions on the ability of our school staff to control dysregulated children at school, and that restrict the ability of schools to suspend children when the Board of Education deems a suspension is appropriate. And I think we should add that current law has led to a substantial increase in the number of administrators required to operate schools, and that we should share the numbers that we've added in an effort to deal with this discipline and behavior, because, you know, in some it can't be denied that what we're forced to do is failing, and it's also expensive. And I'm not interested in letting the legislature off the hook for the poor laws that they've passed. They didn't do it by accident. They did it on purpose. They did it based on any number of ideologies or beliefs that they hold. But the result is, and we've said it and we've heard a lot of it tonight, we have adults in our school systems who cannot control the children who need to be controlled in certain situations. And the result is, the word has been used before, some bristle at it, but it's chaotic. So I would like us to use language that is less ambiguous. I think that there's a chance people read what we have here, they don't understand what we mean. There's specific statutes that need to be revised. They fall under section 121 of the state statutes and 125. At a previous board meeting, I handed out the statutes. I know all the board members have them, but they're 121A.43, 121A.58, 121A.582, 121A.611, and under 125, it's 125A.0942. The law dictates what schools can do in this regard, and it has led to the situation we're in, and I don't see why we wouldn't be very specific so they can't misunderstand. So I would be happy to, I guess I kind of have proposed different language, but in my opinion, we should call out the statutes that are a problem so they know. We should take a strong stand on making the change so they know that we want to, and we should use our position as a very large school district to try to influence what the law says. They need to know the struggles we face, and we can speak on behalf of many in that regard. Thanks.
Any other thoughts or comments from board members? Director Hoekman.
I agree with Director Audette's sentiment that we need some clarity here. To say repeal mandates, that's just so broad and general, or to say modify the discipline statute, something that was that in particular this K-3 discipline statute took schools by surprise. We weren't prepared to handle it, and still kind of reeling from that reality. So to simply say we should modify it, I don't think provides the clarity necessary to ensure that our students are safe at school. Especially in that situation in the elementary schools, they're small kids, but they have concerns. We need to make certain that they're safe and that their peers are safe. and that our staff members are safe. And so I think all of this requires that we're specific to the legislature to say our schools need help. These laws, these statutes are tying our hands, and the staff can't act in a manner to keep the students safe. So any clarity as proposed or suggested perhaps by Director Audette would definitely help direct to provide that direction. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments from board members? Director Langenfeld?
Thank you, Co-Chair Arco. The conversation around K-3 discipline and that statute has come up at the Minnesota Association of School Boards, and we can talk a little bit more about that. The statute was put into place, and this is one of those cases where things can be juxtaposed against each other, and yet the intention around that was to address a disproportionality and suspension of students, particularly at that grade level. So the intention was good. That I stand behind that. However, as we listen to our staff and our leaders in our schools, the space to address this need, as you mentioned, Director Hochman, the space and also the resources and the time to reset. The time to reset has not been included in this discussion. And so I think that as we listen carefully, and we know that these children come to us and they have many great needs sometimes, and they come into our classrooms, and it is disruptive, and it is difficult if we don't have the time as the adults to have those conversations with the parents and have them to be able to reset. So bringing a child into a situation day after day after day without having the resources and the time to really reset and plan for that student so that they are successful has been a really challenging problem for Anoka-Hennepin. And it was part of my discussion with the directors of the different districts when this came up as a possible resolution that the delegate assembly would be voting on Saturday. Now, I'm not a voting member. We had Co-Chair Arco representing as a delegate on Saturday as well. It created a very robust conversation because two things are true, that it was intended in a good way to support students, and yet at the same time, we are finding without resources, time to reset, and space, that we cannot do the student the justice and the disruptions in our classrooms and our teachers. We have to do something different. So the local control issue is also one of the issues that arose as well. I'll stop at that.
Any other thoughts or comments from board members? Director DeShane?
Just a few brief comments for us to keep in mind as we're discussing this legislative platform. Our legislative priorities or platform are always meant to be kind of a brief one-page, high-level prompt document that we can use when we're in person with legislators, or that they can keep kind of on their person as they're at the Capitol and doing their work. In addition to that kind of one-page high-level document that should be crisp and to the point, we've often used in years past a supplemental document that expands on each of those bullet points, provides the exact numbers, to your point, Director Audette, the exact numbers of administrators, the exact costs that kind of go into the weeds a little bit further into the details, so that that discussion prompt and that high-level legislative priority can be further fleshed out when the topic comes up with the legislator, when they're talking about it on the floor. I think that's just an important piece for us to remember as we're kind of deciding here where we want to land on the priorities. And then the work that comes after that is building out that supplemental document with all of the further details that will support that conversation. So thank you for sharing.
I think I saw Director Audette first. Go ahead, Director Simon.
I defer back to you. No, just kidding. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, I think going off of Casey's comment, I guess I'll put Michelle on the spot here. So like that first bullet point there where it says repeal mandates. Like Casey said, in the past we've had kind of supplemental materials, if you will. And I would say even in the past we've had, like on that, referring to the second bullet point where it says modify that specific statute, we've actually provided wording and the potential revision, right? Because sometimes lawmakers might look for that. So I guess, do we have that is the first question? If not, I think that, at least from what I hear in this conversation on the board, we should get that from you to make sure that everything's addressed. And then the last thing that I will say is that one thing that I guess I do not have the data on. I have a lot of anecdotal data. I have teachers saying this happens, and I have people saying this happens, but I don't really have a specifics from our district leadership that says specifically to this mandate, this is what we are experiencing in school and what has to change. I think I hear a lot of high-level talk about, oh, this really doesn't work and we need a few things, but it's not really detailed to me. So I also want to make sure that what we're saying to the legislature is what not only we as a board, but what our leadership and our teachers are actually experiencing and what we need done. And then I am all for giving all the details we need to give to legislators on that.
So just a few comments. I think that there's two different things. So repealing the mandates, I agree that if we wanted to list, here are the specific mandates that are interfering with what we are doing in our schools, right? So I think that is an easy, supplemental document. I think as far as the K-3 discipline goes, what we're hearing is that we need time, we need space, and we need resources, right, for that. I know that AMSD is going with the modify language. MSBA now is going with repeal the K-3 discipline. So that's kind of all over the board. So that would be up for you to, decide if you want to stay with modify or actually put repeal in there for that one in particular. So I think that would be easy to explain, again, underneath, this is what we need and this is why it's not working. And this is why we need the control for that K-3 statute. As far as, like I said, the rest of them, the repealing mandates, there's so many little pieces of mandates that we could absolutely work on. We did that before in 2023 when we were looking at, so many changes happening. We put together a document, worked with the board, worked with the superintendent at that time, and we did put together a document that laid everything out exactly what we were talking about and what we were thinking as an internal document. I don't know if that answered all your questions, but.
Director Audette.
I just want to add further. I'm not completely comfortable with the way that what they did was characterized, because Director Langenfeld mentioned disparate impact and things like that were behind it, but what has changed in the law is it is not, first of all, it's not based upon things that are universally agreed upon. So the intent behind it was it's legislative activism. They believe that the disparate impact is a result of systemic racism. They believe that the educators in our schools and the administrators in our schools are guilty of systemic racism, and that is the reason that the disparate impact exists. And then because of it, they felt they needed to legislate in a space that didn't need legislation because it can be controlled at school boards. And so I know that I do agree with the statement that they believed they were doing a good thing, but they acted in a legislative way based upon a point of view that is not universally shared. And the result is a huge mess. We've talked about it at length. So part of what we're saying is, to me, very heavily focused on this K-3 discipline statute, which is a new thing that we don't like. But it started long before that, and it's way more involved than that. So that's, it's like that's the most recent thing, so we're really going to hit that. we either believe that the other statutes that are in place are all fine and good, or we don't. And I don't feel like we've really reached any kind of consensus or thought on that. So, you know, to me, this is a board priority or it isn't. Administration, I love you, but you're exerting a lot of influence into the process, and you can see how I feel about it. We got to get something done here, and you don't do it by trying to play nice about the situation or, you know, somewhat complimenting when we just sat through a meeting that was really hard to sit through. And I get it, there's people involved in that. That makes that much harder. But the problems that are being faced, they come to light more and more. We don't need to treat them like it's just our problem here. This is a problem that the law is creating all across the state and probably all across the country. It's based on a strong belief system of, you know, like I said, this disparate impact thing. And it's time for someone to take leadership and take a stand on some of these things to try to turn them back so we can try to repair the damage that's been done. Of course, we want to do great things for our kids. I can't believe anybody would suggest any of us would tolerate discipline based upon race or any other thing. And I don't know. It's a hard topic to talk about. It needs to be talked about.
Director DeShane.
Thank you. Just two quick things that I think are important to the conversation. One, I don't see any compliments in our written legislative platform commentary. So like what we say or how we talk about it here might be different perspectives that we all bring to the discussion, and I think that's fair and valid and relevant to the conversation, but I don't think we're putting down in our document any compliments. In fact, asking for repeals or modification or repeal, depending on where we land for that language on the second bullet, that's pretty strong language in a written document to the legislature. At least in my 3 years on this, sitting on this board with you, I haven't seen it be that strong of language before. Secondly, I know Zach and I have spent a lot of time as co-chairs in conversations with each of you about this, doing the reviews and the revisions kind of behind the scenes. We've definitely taken in and considered all the feedback, talked with each other one-on-one, and I at this point in time, I don't know that we have a board majority to move any further in the direction that you're asking for at this conversation. It's good for discussion, and I think having us continue to figure out what goes in that supplemental document as the talking points to support each of these bullets will be the next step of this important work. So I just wanted to kind of share that context as to how this process has been going on and the behind-the-scenes conversations that we've all had with each other to try to land on language that could be supported by most of us.
Superintendent McIntyre?
Maybe just to help add a little context too, I do want to thank all of you for sending in input to the co-chairs. Thank you for Michelle to try to capture 6 different perspectives and landed on one document. This is the state and federal legislative auditors report of the 34 laws that exceed the federal law that include behavioral issues, but beyond that in special education. And I want to be really strong about this, that that first bullet really opens the door to the things you're talking about, along with many other things that as we are looking towards cuts, these are extra elements of work that impact students and our staff because of the requirements that come along with the categories in here. And I believe there's actually more than 34 from my own experience, but this is, I want to be able to leverage with your help, eliminating as many of those, to me, all of them, that many other states do. And it's especially true with our situation, along with many other districts, that we can't afford to have additional requirements in the space we're in, and it does capture the conditional procedures that's the terms for the behavioral intervention pieces that you've been talking about. So there's that and many more that it's been really hard to move the needle, and they meaning the legislature, I've been pushing on this for a long time. I want to keep coming back and to say we need to repeal all of them to really give our staff less time on paper, more time with kids, and more time on the right things with kids. So I hope that's helpful, but it's like I want to be specific, and I also want to be specific to a very broad set of rules that I don't think has resulted in really great outcomes by having them. So that's just a piece of the puzzle. Now that can be in our talking points as well if you want to go another direction. I just need the majority of you to be on one page when we go to talk about this. And many of you have been with me and Michelle. This is the conversation starter. The real conversation is what you have when you have their attention, whether it's 2 minutes or 30 minutes. That's the impactful part. This is the part you can leave behind as a reminder of the key themes. So hopefully that's helpful.
Any other thoughts or comments from board member? Director Simon?
Thanks, Zach. I'm a little confused about this conversation because I don't think it seems like there's a big disagreement, but I don't, when I think of the details, it doesn't seem like there's a big disagreement to me. It seems like what we're saying is that these are the high-level bullet points, but we're going to go back and have documents that point out the actual mandates, point out specifically what we want done about them. And I know, Michelle, you talked about, and I agree, it is ultimately the board's decision on whether we say repeal or revise that K-3 discipline. My stance is still, I'd like to hear, I'm not in the schools personally. I'm not a teacher. I'm not an administrator in the schools. I would like to hear from our experts on what they think would be best. So I would like to get that expert opinion before I make this board member's decision. So I personally don't hear huge disagreement with the exception of maybe, I don't know if I heard this or not, but we want this front-facing document to have all the details, which I kind of think gets a little messy. I think having a backup document would be better. And maybe I heard this, I'm not sure if I did, but you know, we do not control the philosophy of people who were elected to represent Minnesota about why they want to bring laws forward. So I'm going to assume good intentions, but I do know that the data does show, for whatever reason, that students of color are suspended and expelled much higher than other students. So regardless of what's happening out there, I just think we always have to look back to, we are public education, we are government education, and we have to educate every student that comes to us. So if we see that students, for whatever reason, let's say students in poverty don't do as well, we have to figure out how to structure our public education best to serve those students. Now, what is that? I'm not sure exactly what that is, and I don't think we're there yet, but I'm going to assume good intentions of everyone and legislators that that's what they're hoping for, and that's what they hope their laws are going to change. But it is incumbent upon us to tell them when they create a law that doesn't work, why it doesn't work, and what we need changed. So,
Director Langenfeld.
Just a point of clarification to the superintendent. Would not the modification or the K-3 discipline statute fall under the repeal of the mandates?
It can be if we want to make sure we talk about it that way. I think it is a matter of how we talk about it, right? And to Director Simon's point, I'd just love to add that, yes, we definitely need to have those data points ready to go as far as number of incidents, especially in this K-3 space. You heard, at our August work session, our experts, those elementary principals, are the ones living it with their teams every day. I think our legislature also needs to hear we've been in a time of cutting, still needing to invest resources in new program options as a result of this law. So there's a true cost that has also come with it in the form of those things. So I think we can dial that in a supporting document that has those factual elements behind this, if that's the wish of the board.
Thank you.
I have some thoughts I'll add to all of this. So first off, the document looks great. I think the way it was formatted, kind of with all of the input that we were giving, It follows what we were asking for. It looks great. I appreciate putting it together. So as Director Langenfeld had mentioned, I was one of the delegates at the MSBA Delegate Assembly over the weekend. And there's kind of two things of note to mention from that. The first one, on day one, I actually have the agenda from the meeting here. They had a guest speaker, David Schultz, who is as it says here, a distinguished university professor of political science and legal studies at Hamline University. He gave a very interesting speech on just where we are at politically, both nationally and at the state level, and how we got here. And he filled in the context of the last 50 years to describe where we were and how we got here and just how all of that connects together. It's a very interesting speech. I thought it was very valuable. One of the delegates decided to ask him at the end, because it was open to Q&A. They just said, you know, you're very familiar with Minnesota politics. What do you expect, given this strange split house scenario that's, I guess, only happened once in Minnesota history? What do you expect they're going to do, like in terms of funding schools, in terms of mandates? And to give a very concise summary of what he said, he gave reasons for it, but essentially his prediction was all of the mandates are going to remain, and the funding is going to be less for schools than it was the previous year. So I say this not because I'm happy about it, it's terrible, but I guess almost a cautionary note, brace yourself. That's what a political scientist thinks is going to happen. I don't actually tend to disagree. I think that's a pretty accurate prediction, so that's kind of a taste of what's to come, I think. That's just, you know, just being a realist, just acknowledging probably what's ahead of us. So it'll be hard stuff to work through, but just kind of keep that in mind. The other interesting thing of note that came from the MSBA is, as Director Langenfeld had mentioned, they voted in favor of repealing the K-3 non-exclusionary discipline mandate. So that, I think, is encouraging because I do want the data, as Director Simon had said. And I could be wrong. Maybe we talked about, maybe you gave numbers at like a work session, Corey, about some of the suspensions we have at the K-3 level. But whatever the case, my understanding is it is kind of wreaking havoc on the schools, so I'm very happy to see that. I'm happy that our priorities align with that. I'm happy that the MSBA took that stance. Do I think it's necessarily going to change that? I'm going to be honest, probably not. But what I do know, and this is true about anything, you know, even outside of politics, is sometimes, or not sometimes, almost always, you got to start the process somewhere. And sometimes the process just starts with a conversation, starts with just sending a message. And just because we send the message doesn't mean they're going to act on it immediately. But as long as we start sending that message, I think that's what's really important because, again, my understanding is that mandate and a lot of these other statutes that Director Audette had mentioned, plain and simply put, they just tie our hands and they allow chaos to kind of reign, which is really unfortunate. Nobody wants that in the public school system. So all of that to be said, I do think we're heading in the right direction with these priorities. But one last thing to note, and I kind of want to tie all of this together, because we're faced with a lot of problems in our district that we're trying to solve. I think we're doing it as best a job as we can. Improve literacy at all grades is one of our strategic priorities. Improve student engagement, connection, and behavior, and then increase employee recruitment and retention. And then, so those are 3 strategic priorities, and then the one that also takes a lot of space, and rightly so, on this strategic priorities card is the budgetary items we need, essentially the monetary shortfall. So the way I kind of look at this is, there's a variety of reasons that all of these things are problems. That perhaps, from my vantage point, the single biggest one that is a root cause of perhaps all of them is the behavior issue. And the reason the behavior issue exists, there's a variety of reasons, but the biggest thing hindering our ability to deal with it are these statutes. And if you think about it, just go through all of our priorities one by one. So improve literacy at all grades, okay? We definitely want to do that. But the reality is if in K through 3, and remember we want every student reading at a 3rd grade level by 3rd grade, that's one of those key benchmarks. If we have disruptive behaviors that we're not able to deal with, that's going to take away from students who do want to learn, it's going to stop them from learning. If we create, hostile and dangerous environments for teachers, it's going to make it hard for teachers to teach. Improve student engagement, connection, and behavior, well, that's quite literally what we're talking about right now. Increase employee recruitment and retention. I mean, we just heard from so many staff and teachers tonight about just various, let's just say, disciplinary and behavioral issues that they deal with. It's hard to make a pitch to anyone to be a teacher when the environment that you're going to be teaching in is one where you might be subject to abuse. That I have never had a job in any industry, from fast food and on to everything I've worked in, where that type of behavior would be tolerated. And it fascinates me that, fascinate is not the correct word, but it's sad to me that the one place that bad behavior is apparently mandated is the public school system, because we just have to deal with it. We have no opportunity. And then the last thing, our budget shortfall. Well, I know for a fact we spend many millions of dollars on both positions and plans and programs to attempt in the best way that we can to address the behavioral issues that we have. So, and whether or not they're working, some of them work to varying degrees, but the point is we spend many millions of dollars on that. The behavioral issue that we're talking about, it is quite literally the root cause of virtually all of the problems that we're facing. All of the things that we're going to stress to our legislators, behavioral issues are at the root cause of that. And if the state would permit us to deal with it, we would be doing so much better in all of these areas. And this is why, again, I share the sentiments of Director Hochman and Director Edet. This is why we stress it so much, is just because that is the root cause of so many of these problems. And it's heartbreaking to hear the stories that go along with it. So all of that is to say, I want to keep up the fight, keep pushing to get the legislators to repeal these laws. I think we're on the right track. And yeah, hopefully they'll act in this legislative session and do some good for the school system. So that's all. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or comments?
Just one way we can frame this, and honestly, we're all going to have a 30-second elevator opportunity with lots of people on how to talk about this. And our 3 priorities are clear, and there's 2 primary reasons for us not attaining them. And it's the student behavior piece and then the educational funding. And the funding, if you add up these bullets, that's $74 million we're short as a district. And there's your elevator speech. If you add up those 4 bullets and the estimates we have there, if you take the high end, it's a little lower than that if you take the low end. So we need something that you can say in just a few seconds, and then if you get 30 minutes or more, you can go deeper and you can really explain that with more of the data and more of the examples, able to tell our story. But there's many hallway opportunities everywhere that this is the tool for that. This is the tool to make an impression that maybe opens the door for more time later with somebody. So I've felt that I get 20 seconds in the hallway to say what we need to say and hopefully get their attention to buy some additional time later. And we can all do that, right? So hopefully this is the door opener, and then we can flesh out the things that we really want to explain deeper, right? So thank you.
Perfect. Director Simon?
Thanks, Zach. So one thing, to go off your comments, first of all, I absolutely agree, and hopefully you know and everyone knows, I believe that student disruption is the #1 thing too. So absolutely agree with that. I agree that we should continue to tell legislators the laws that they have put in place that interfere with us being able to do that at our schools. One thing I'll say though is that I'm not convinced that any law that the state has made has created the situation in our schools. We had increased student disruption well before the K-3 discipline statute went in place. And it had been increasing even pre-COVID, so it was increasing. I believe it's more of a societal thing that we're facing. And I want to let the public know, Anoka-Hennepin isn't waiting on the state legislature to change all these laws for us to try things and do things and try to create better environments for our school, which I think we have done over the years. And I'll mention 2 brand new ones. We are doing a pilot in middle school right now to help with that. Hopefully that is successful. That started 2nd trimester of this year. Hopefully that's successful and can be a model that gets rolled out to secondary. And we are working on, the superintendent has been working on, and I don't know if he wants to comment on it, but a K-3 solution that will abide by the current law if it does not get changed. So I just want to make sure we're talking about all these things, and a lot of times the public may hear that, it's just bad and getting worse. I just want them to know that we are taking steps to improve that situation. Thank you.
Director Hoekman?
Yeah, I do appreciate that. There's been a lot of quality effort by people working to make certain that we are providing really quality, safe environments and thinking outside the box to work within the framework that we're given. But I think the idea of repealing some of these mandates so that we can do the important work necessary to make certain that all kids are safe without incurring extra expense, the expense necessary to create new programs on the fly because the legislative process reached in and took away our independent control has really just been difficult for us. So thank you to everyone who continues to work hard to make certain that our students are safe. I want to make certain that our staff are protected as well in this process, and I think that all comes together with keeping these ideas concise and clear so that we can communicate them with our legislators. Thank you.
All right, well, if there are no other comments, if there are, please let me know. I believe we have a vote on the legislative platform. All right. So is there a motion to approve the legislative platform as presented in Appendix I?
So moved.
Thank you, Director DeShane. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Simon. Is there any more discussion? Director Simon?
I seconded it, but I had a question, so I was waiting for someone else to second. I just want to make sure that as part of what we're voting on today will include the backup material we talked about with the details. I believe everyone nodded on that, but I just want to make sure so I can vote on it.
I believe that's the case, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, will all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Will all those opposed say nay? Nay. All right, with five, I believe 5 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle Trelston. So our next agenda item is elementary and secondary education. Item 9A, resolution to close specific school sites for non-resident enrollments. Welcome, Dr. Joel Verduin, Chief Technology and Information Officer.
Thank you, co-chairs Arco, DeShane, and Superintendent McIntyre. Tonight before you, I have a resolution to close certain schools to new open enrollment applications. And as part of the presentation, I'll just touch on a few items that were not included in the board briefing and reemphasize a couple of important points from that board briefing document. One distinction, and I want to do so with the understanding that some people may be sort of new to the discussions around open enrollment, and make a differentiation too for another process that we have for in-district transfers. They somewhat sound the same. There's differences to it that are important, and I just wanted to point some of those out. So open enrollment, as mentioned in the board briefing, is a statutory requirement of school districts. All school districts in Minnesota have to participate in the open enrollment program. In-district transfers, which are students that actually reside in Anoka-Hennepin but want to attend a school that they don't physically reside in, is a very similar process, and we actually run them at the same time because they affect the school's capacity and staffing. And so we have students applying for in-district transfers at the same time, open enrollment students. But the statutes address open enrollment. In-district transfers governed by our own board policies. Just as of last year, which is the most recent year that we have numbers from the MDE, we had about 1,500 students open enrolled in our district. And we have 3,000 resident students that are open enrolled out. So about it is a 2-to-1, at least in this previous year. One thing that I would draw attention to, though, is when students open enroll out, that does not mean that they were students of ours. It is highly likely that they didn't attend our schools at all and have been open enrolled out for the majority of their careers, school careers. So that's an important distinction because it's not the same as saying that somehow we lost 3,000 students. We have, as long as I've been keeping track of numbers, we have had that disparity between the students who open enroll out and the number that we have open enrolled in. Just wanted to make sure that that was something people had in front of them. As part of that statute, we do have the ability as a school district and a school board to limit the open enrollment students based on a variety of factors, including the programs that we have in their capacities, school buildings in their capacities. We can even choose to limit by grade level, although I think that works in a district that has maybe single high school, single middle schools a little bit better than it works for us. It doesn't necessarily make sense to say we're only going to take so many sixth graders or we're only going to take so many eighth graders. But that is an item that's listed within the statutes that we have an opportunity to limit open enrollment by. Students, when they apply, they are applying to attend a district. They are offered an opportunity to request a school, but that is something that a school can take under advisement and grant or not grant. We don't have to necessarily place them at a particular school, but the application is to attend Anoka-Hennepin as a district. And in fact, throughout their career, they, if they come in at the elementary level, they'll move through to middle schools and to a high school, and we just move them with their cohorts to the best that we can do to keep them with the fellow students that they're with. Parents may also list a second and a third option for schools, and we do the best that we can to honor those for parents who want to come, or for the parents who want to send their schools to our district. We do the best to try to honor the requests that they have, but there are times when some of our capacities can be a challenge with that. Another aspect of the statutes, once accepted, students remain a resident, not a resident, but they maintain that in status with the school district that accepted them throughout their career. There are exceptions to that. Students who are habitually truant can be sent back to their previous district. Students who are over 17 and are truant for up to 15 days can also be sent back to their resident district. Otherwise, students are a part of this district unless some other intervening factor sends them back. Tonight, there are considerations for closing 3 sites to open enrollment applications, and those determinations have been made after our associate superintendents review numbers and talk to the schools about their capacities, just to make sure that there aren't any things that we may not be aware of in terms of how schools are used and how they're using their sites, because sometimes people and programs move around, and we want to make sure that we're in touch with principals before we make these decisions. So those discussions have been had. Our associate superintendents are recommending that we close Dayton Elementary School, Blaine High School, and Champlin Park High School to open enrollment. Those sites, particularly the 2 high schools, are just right around the 3,000 mark, a little bit higher for Blaine High School, and that is a high capacity, probably one of the highest ones that I've seen in the time that I've been here. Dayton Elementary School is at around 560, although their first 3 grade levels are a bit bigger than their upper grade levels, which means the upper grade smaller numbers will be moving out, the bigger numbers will be moving up, and so they should see continued upward enrollment at that site. I mentioned that the way that this process would work is once the board has determined to close sites, any new applications that we have for those sites will be offered to a alternative for those applications. We will make exceptions if a student is a sibling of another student so that we can keep siblings together. For Blaine High School, because it's a Northwest Suburban Integration School District, there are still slots that are offered to that program, and students do attend Blaine. What we often do is offer a smaller number of slots as the school's capacity reaches where it is currently. So that's how that would play out. For students who are already here as open enrollment students, they continue to matriculate with their cohorts. That's accounted for both in our projections and it's accounted for in staffing. So they're known numbers that are moving on to those school sites. So if there are no other questions, I would seek an approval of a resolution to close those 3 sites, Dayton Elementary School, Blaine High School, and Champlin Park High School to new open enrollment applications.
All right, well, thank you very much. Board members, are there any questions for Dr. Verduen? Dr. Simon?
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Joe. So I have a question about, you had mentioned early about state law requires us to receive applications and accept open enrollment out of district. Is that correct? Something like that?
We're required to participate in the open enrollment.
Okay, got it.
Statewide processes are all school districts.
But it's up to us whether we accept folks or not?
We can put limitations on and in some of the areas that I'd mentioned, and we can also limit open enrollment applications to the lesser of, I've got to see if I do this right, the lesser of 1% of the student population at a grade level, which would essentially be 30 kids per grade level. The lesser of that, or the number of open enrollment students that we have open enrolling out of the district. Okay. So that's a real broad thing that we can do in terms of limitations.
Not confusing at all. So when we create criteria about capacity for schools and then put them on this list that we're not going to accept open enrollment for them, does the district have complete control over the criteria we set for capacity? Or does the state dictate how we do that?
We have control over criteria that are not statutorily prohibited.
Okay. So, and I asked those questions to get to this point. So we've heard, I think it was in the Andover cluster, families came to us and said, from previous boundary changes, there were a certain neighborhood, I think it was in a farm area, certain area that was Andover Elementary, but then was going to go to Anoka Middle School. I believe that was the scenario. So my question is, why could we, not why wouldn't we probably just haven't thought of it, but could we create a criteria that says, now we know this, these folks have called this out to us, we're going to look at Oakview Middle School and say, these folks should go there, if we say that. These folks should go there because of this. So now it's at capacity, so we're not going to accept open enrollment there. So I guess my question is that specific question, but then in general, can we look at other things in our criteria for capacity that protects Anoka-Hennepin district students to be able to open enroll a little more flexible, if that makes sense? Was that totally confusing, or does that make sense?
I think it makes sense in what your intent in your question is about. I think mixing in district transfer students, which are Anoka-Hennepin residents already, with open enrollment students, the statute doesn't apply to in-district transfer, so students who may want to go to Oakview, but they attended Rum River, I think is the actual school that you may have heard from parents. If that were the case, the statutes are silent on how we work with our own resident students.
And my only question was, we heard the concern from some, and I don't know if it's true or not, is that we accept open enrollment outside the district, therefore we don't have seats for our in-district transfers. So I was putting the two together to say that if that is true in any case, we should protect those seats by using a different criteria to close schools to open enrollment.
In my mind, I would almost separate the two and say one should be, if there is a desire to make a change to that, it should be done through a boundary process, which would actually, I mean, that would stop what is the kind of the root question issue, I think, from that, which would be to put that boundary or change that boundary so that Oakview and that has other implications, but.
Yeah, it does. And we do boundaries at a certain date and have them set for a certain date. So, I mean, the board could always change that. But, I mean, this is a way to potentially protect our in-district folks and still stick to our boundary process. I don't know. I'm just, if we have folks like that want to do an in-district transfer, at least this board member would like to honor that. And if there are seats, offer them to those folks as opposed to have out-of-district folks come in and take those seats. That's all I'm saying.
The other thing I would say, too, is I am not sure that we have turned down in-district transfers to go to Oakview. There are implications for students who do that within athletics, and I think that is another component of the folks that you were talking to. As long as they transfer schools, there's an athletics impact. I can follow up on that and make sure that we have, I will follow up and make sure that we know what has happened to Oakview in terms of applications for in-district transfer students and OEs. And I'll make sure that data is provided to the whole board.
Director Audette.
Yep, thank you. And Mr. Simon, thanks for raising that concern. I just want to point out that my understanding for that specific case was that an open enrollment transfer would not have remedied their situation. And that was information I got from speaking with some of the people who were involved. There is a problem with in this case it involved hockey, with the way that the Youth Hockey League had set up their rules, which said that no matter where you enroll, you have to play hockey within the area for the association that you are zoned in for your high school. So in that case, what that meant, even if those folks had open enrolled into the Andover system, because they were based on district boundary placed in the Anoka cluster, they had to play hockey over there, and that was kind of a pretty complicated thing for us. So what they were really wanting us to do was change the boundary, which of course was it comes with all, we've talked about all the difficulties of that. So, but I think probably all of us agree with. Well, I don't know if we all do. I do agree with the sentiment that you expressed as well, that providing flexibility for the enrollment inside the district makes sense where we can do it. But in that specific case, since it was brought up, I don't think it would have fixed that problem.
Director Langenfeld was next, unless. Okay.
Just a clarification. So in-district transfer, students would have priority over someone trying to open enroll into that same school for a slot. Is that accurate? Do our students who live in our district have priority over students who are coming from outside the district and coming into slots in schools?
In this case, the closing of this to open enrollment would cause a prevention for all of those new open enrollment applications. We could still have the option of having an in-district transfer student place there.
Right, but if the school was not closed, do our students have priority? I'm just asking a general question.
Usually we take both, but okay. Yes, I suppose if there was an instance where we were really concerned about a particular grade level, then the in-district transfers would be placed first.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you so much.
Director Simon?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Yeah, Matt, I agree with you on that. We cannot solve outside of Anoka-Hennepin athletic things, and we don't want to try to get involved in that. I did hear those parents also say about they had students within maybe not that neighborhood, but a close neighborhood they wanted them to go to school with them too, so that's mostly what I was kind of, but you're absolutely right. We can't youth hockey that isn't controlled by Anoka-Hennepin. Nothing we can do there, folks, but yeah, thanks.
Any other thoughts or comments from board members?
Just board members, just for your, if it helps out, this is all in alignment with policy 509, board policy. So we're following those criteria that are laid out for both open enrollment and in-district transfer. So what you're dealing with right now is a capacity issue at those 3 schools, making sure that we don't overcommit space with the limitations we have.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, members, before us is a resolution to close specific school sites for non-resident enrollments as presented in Appendix K. Hearing no requests for discussion, the clerk will call the roll, please.
Simon votes aye. Hochman? Aye. Audette?
Aye.
Langenfeld? Aye. DeShane?
Aye.
Arco?
Aye. With 6 in favor and 0 opposed, that resolution is approved. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is item 9B, the facilities update. Welcome Greg Cole, Chief Operations Officer, and Ben Martinson, Director of Buildings and Grounds.
Good evening, Chairs Arco and DeShane, Superintendent McIntyre, members of the school board. I'm joined this evening by Ben Martinson, Director of Buildings and Grounds. We're going to try to accomplish a few things here. First of all, a little bit of a celebration. We're celebrating the fact that we have completed all of the projects for the bond referendum that was passed in 2017, the $250 million bond. It's been a pretty exciting process, and I can't say this enough, and I'll probably repeat it. We want to thank the voters of Anoka-Hennepin for their support. The transformation has been amazing, and we wanted to just provide an opportunity to review what that referendum was able to do for the students and staff and communities of Anoka-Hennepin, and again, to just showcase what our kids are enjoying every day. So just to go back in time here, some of the ideas behind the referendum was first and foremost to create safe and secure learning environments through the removal of portable classrooms. We had portable classrooms on multiple campuses throughout the district, and as a part of this process, we no longer have any portable classrooms in Anoka-Hennepin any longer, which is a huge safety improvement that we're thankful for. We did need to construct additional schools and classroom space where student populations are significantly growing. While our enrollment has remained fairly steady over the last decade, our populations have shifted, and you'll kind of see how we've had to adjust to that over time. Solutions for maintaining quality schools by improving science labs, media centers, and flexible learning areas throughout the school district. And then addressing class sizes at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school. Again, in some of the areas that we've received heavier pressure because of enrollment increases in construction in various parts of the school district. In terms of our ongoing philosophy that came out of that, these are the things, when I say our buildings and grounds departments and how we prioritize projects in conjunction with school board strategic priorities. Expand and upgrade flexible learning spaces. We do look at our spaces in terms of 25 years out. We want them to be able to last that long at least, so flexibility is the key, knowing that things are going to change over the next couple of decades, and we want to be sure that our future leaders don't have to expend millions of dollars to make adjustments on things because of poor planning. So we really try to create that opportunity for flexible spaces. Increased opportunities for our students. You'll see how that's played out in a variety of ways. And as I said, accommodate the shifting demographics of our school district. We have seen kind of a push toward the borders of our school district over the last 5 to 10 years. An increase in security. We've been able to make tremendous strides in this area that we'll point out to you. And then fiscal stewardship. It's just so important to us that we maximized and stretched those dollars to the greatest extent that we possibly could. A lot of that has to do with partnering with our buildings, strategizing with regard to how we use our funds that qualify for particular things in order to maximize and move projects forward as best we possibly can. Two new elementary schools is a part of that. Brookside Elementary School in Ramsey and Sunrise Elementary School in Blaine were the two new elementaries to address some of those population shifts that I talked about. As a part of that as well, we did actually put an addition on Sunrise to accommodate that changing demographic in the Blaine area. I am happy to report the housing starts have eased quite a bit in the Blaine area, so we feel pretty good about the space that we have in conjunction with the boundary changes that occurred a couple of years ago to accommodate that unprecedented growth in Blaine. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who's going to talk about some of the specific things that happened to begin with at our high schools.
Thank you, Greg, and good evening, co-chairs Arco and DeShane, Superintendent McIntyre, members of the board. So in addition to the work completed at the two elementaries, we have made significant improvements to the 5 flagship high schools. These included classroom renovation expansions, fitness center additions, upgrades and expansions to the front offices, office remodels and enhanced security features, and of course, the removal of all the portables classrooms. Here are just a couple of the upgraded entrances to Coon Rapids High School, Anoka High School, and Blaine High School. Here are a couple of the fitness centers at Champlin Park High School and Andover High School.
Can I just say, with regard to the fitness centers, these new fitness centers at all 5 high schools rival many of the small colleges in the state of Minnesota, if not are better than them. So these facilities are heavily used by multiple athletes and physical education courses throughout the day, and we're very proud of them.
Okay, so much like the high schools, we also completed classroom renovations and additions, security upgrades, cafeteria improvements, gym expansions, and removal of portable classrooms at the following locations. The River Trails Center at L. Jacob, that also got an addition. Anoka Middle School for the Arts, Fred Moore Campus, the Washington Campus, and of course Champlin Brooklyn Park Academy. Here's a couple of the exterior renovations and additions to both Anoka Middle School for the Arts, Fred Moore Campus, and then Champlin Brooklyn Park Academy. 33 libraries were renovated, including McKinley Elementary, as shown above, and Northdale Middle School. We also completed significant upgrades to several science classrooms at Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids, and Champlin Park High Schools. Here's just some more pictures of Andover Elementary School Library and then the Oakview Middle School Library. We also recently completed, in the first wave, there were still some changes in the naming convention of whether it was IMC or library, so the first wave didn't get library letters, so we actually got to finish this recently where they are all now identified as library outside there, so that's a kind of fun to just close that one up.
So the Fit for the Future process, I just want to remind folks how that came about. There were task forces that were formed with community members, district staff, school board members. They were heavy lifts in terms of gathering information from all corners of the school district in order to come up with these projects. That collaborative effort, I think, was tremendously successful, given the fact that we were able to pass the bond with tremendous voter support. And we're here today, too, to let folks know that we delivered on everything that we promised within budget and on time. And it's something that we're really proud of. But again, that couldn't have happened without the community members and our voting public, our school board members over the course of the last 6 years, and then district and building staff. There was a tremendous amount of collaboration that occurred, and as a result of that, it impacted many of the practices that Ben and his team lead with regard to how we determine projects moving forward. You'll hear about the aesthetics initiative from the school board, where we were able to improve a lot of our other buildings that didn't benefit from the bond over the last couple of years. And that process involved the Buildings and Grounds team meeting with every single administrative team in the school district to make those priorities. It was a heavy lift, but it was well worth it, and we learned a lot about many of our schools' needs. But that collaborative process is key. How are projects determined? And we're kind of moving in away from the bond here and just how we determine projects in general. School board strategic priorities are obviously a huge driver. Student achievement, opportunity and access for our students. We want our spaces to improve student learning and opportunities for them to participate in all sorts of different things. Safe and welcoming spaces. It is really hard to be safe and welcoming at the same time. But with our visitor management system, and then also our new, particularly at the high schools, but all of our schools, we have vestibules now with pretty secured entrances. And just the way that we're having families and kids move throughout the building is controlled, but also welcoming at the same time. And that was a priority, and a lot of thought went into how we would do that in order to not make people feel like, you know, it's hard to get into school and see their kids or to visit with their teachers. And then, as I mentioned before, flexible learning spaces.
Yeah, so some of the things that I've been kind of spearheaded with is the sustainability portion of the district, and some of that is, you know, looking into solar panels, as we've done at 2 pilot locations at our elementaries, looking at offset agreements, doing energy audits with some vendors of choice, and then participating in rebate programs with our utility partners. As far as stakeholder input, like Greg said, we met individually as a team with site-based leadership during the aesthetics initiative. Last year, I also launched a facilities committee made up of around 40 various stakeholders and various departments across the district. We meet quarterly to talk about various things that are facility-based to kind of get a recommendation so that me and my team aren't making unilateral decisions in a silo for site-based stuff when we're not as close to it as sometimes you can imagine. I also have weekly B&G meetings for me and my team where we talk about ongoing projects, things in the district, and just areas and opportunities in which we can collaborate and solve problems and issues. I meet weekly with Greg and Tim Coltis, who is our business finance analyst, as far as just again getting some of that stakeholder involvement, asking them about projects go, no-goes, funding mechanisms, stuff like that. As far as the facility condition index is concerned, I am working with our design teams to update that yearly with all major projects completed, so we have a real life, in as close as we can in time snapshot of what's going on and what our condition is of our facilities and all of our equipment and assets district wide. Also consulting with my various teams and consultants on sites to see what is evaluated on that list. When we're talking about funding, again, I'm meeting with Greg and Tim Coltis, and we're looking at various sources to finance projects, stretch opportunities, and dollars and overall scope of work needed. So how can we get most bang for our buck? How can we leverage economies of scale? When we're already in a building, have it offline for various other reasons? What can we do while we're there to just get multiple bids and quotes to just crash the net on it a little bit? So.
With regard to funding too, the one thing that I would point out is we do manage projects in-house. That's not something most districts do. That equates to about 3% of all projects. So if you do the math on the bond, that's about $7.5 million that we were able to use on projects that most districts would have to spend on that management fee. So Ben's team does a tremendous job in making sure that our contractors follow the contract, do what they're supposed to be doing, don't ask for unreasonable change orders and those sorts of things. So you need to know the contract documents well in order to be able to pull that off.
We're going kind of fast too, so if you have any questions along the road, just throw up a wing, so.
So one of the big initiatives as well that has had school board support over the years is moving from leased spaces into spaces that we own, which has resulted into some repurposing. The basic premise there is that we were trying to move students into spaces that were designed for students and move them out of spaces that were designed for adults that have been retrofitted to work for students. And as time has passed with regard to some of these spaces and our changing population, it became increasingly clear that these lease spaces were insufficient to meet their needs. I'm speaking specifically, one example is our Bridges program for some of our most physically disabled students. That became a real challenge over time just because of the proximity to a parking lot and other businesses. So we were able to repurpose Franklin Elementary School and merge two programs, the Bridges and Pathways programs, into that. As you know, the Two Rivers opened up at Franklin this fall. The dedication ceremony was this fall. Very excited about that space. In addition to that, over a year ago, if you remember, we were able to move Regional High School out of a leased space in Coon Rapids into this facility here at Sandburg, forming Sandburg Regional High School. And that was in response to two big things that the students told us that they didn't have at the previous facility that they really wanted. One was a gym, which they now have. They have access to daily. And then also just a wider variety of electives. So starting this year, we weren't able to do it the first year, but starting this year, they'll have access to tech ed courses. We were also able to move the team program that was over in Andover, which provided opportunity for students in our district to sell goods. They're now selling it out of this facility as well. And I think there's a little more foot traffic. We're hoping that we'll get better business with regard to that. But using these historic buildings, retrofitting them and changing them, sharing them with the school board space, which we thank you for, that we're able to put a high school here and also still hold our board meetings, I think that makes us better. I think it communicates a lot to our community too about these shared spaces, and these are historic spaces that we've tried to maintain. And that's just a couple of pictures here of the Two Rivers dedication and then Sandburg.
So the aesthetics initiative was an initiative that was board-driven to enhance curb appeal and address some of the projects that couldn't be prioritized with other funding sources due to the governing rules or availability, or they weren't really bond. You know, they didn't see a whole lot of love from the bond. The project included office upgrades, additional irrigation, painting of various areas, playground upgrades, signage, and more. As mentioned in previous slides, the team and I met with each site's administrative team to listen to their concerns and better understand their needs from a site-specific perspective. We also are keeping their feedback and wish list to better help us inform the FCI and LTFM and capital planning moving forward. So basically, we heard their concerns, figured out what we could do in real time with the dollars we had, but also keeping that ledger so that when we do have other funds available, or when we are coming back out to their buildings for various other projects, whether it's LTF and whatever, we can ask them, hey, when you brought this up at the aesthetics meeting, is that still a priority? Because we can probably rope that into here because it's adjacent to the space. And again, we can leverage some of those better dollars because we're just on site and can get better quotes and bids. So safety and security. We are currently upgrading our access control hardware and software district-wide. This includes the implementation of new single-use ID cards, replacing the fobs, along with the alerts and mobile applications featured previously as featured on this slide. We aim to complete this process by summer with a full rollout in the fall. Additionally, Dayton Elementary is halfway through its interior wall build-out, which will eliminate the open concept and address the safety and security challenges that presented.
And I just want to chime in just so the public is aware. These are strategic initiatives approved by the school board, separate from the bond. So these two things are really important, specifically with regard to safety and security. The other thing that we just want you to be aware of with regard to this is I want to give a shout out to Tim Fournier and Jess Borgland. They worked together to write a federal COPS grant, which allows us greater security measures for all of our schools. And we were awarded that grant. It's a $300,000 federal grant to improve school site security. Our part is to match $100,000 for a $400,000 project. And they will, those funds will be going toward further securing access points at all of our schools, particularly those that we see as maybe having higher vulnerabilities in certain areas. Again, 10 synthetic turf fields is another part of what we were able to accomplish in this time frame. And I would just say that everything we hoped for, I think, has come to fruition with regard to these. These 10 synthetic turf fields are used by thousands of kids a day, whether it's physical education class, marching band, multiple boys and girls athletic teams. I think it's important to note, too, that we get an additional 2 months of use per year out of these fields than we would grass. So our kids are getting onto them more frequently, and more of them are able to use them. They've also been used pretty heavily by our communities. Just a couple of pictures there of Blaine and Champlin Park. Those are their stadium fields.
Okay, so now we're going to kind of roll into our 2026 major projects in LTFM respect. We are in phase 2 of the 3-summer phase of dehumidification at Eisenhower, affecting 14 classrooms. We are in the final phase of Sand Creek Elementary for dehumidification, so we'll be wrapping that one up, which will be nice. We're also in the final phase of the Champlin Park High School hydronics piping. And then phase 3 of 4 of that Dayton Elementary classroom remodel and wall build-out, which has a little bit of an LTFM portion. Some future needs and some things that we're just kind of, considering and want to kind of raise some attention to. Here's a snapshot of the items on the horizon. These ones are typically larger district-wide systems and come with significant price tags that will need to be addressed and planned in the coming years. So certainly tennis court resurfacing at the high schools and middle schools, and that can be approximately about $3.5 million all in.
This is one we'll probably be coming back to you just with some direction and guidance on. We have 2 high schools where, you know, the use is heavy with regard to physical education classes and competition, that being at Andover High School and Coon Rapids High School. Middle schools, it's a little bit different circumstance, so more to come on that.
Roof system is another thing that's kind of been just not really addressed, in at least my short-term time here. We do have about a 10-year cost, about $100 million. And that's something that we routinely get inspected and checked with vendors, you know, to check feasibility, understand, okay, is it, you know, needed, or is it, can we stretch it, or can we do some patching, you know, or do a mill, not a mill and hole labor, but just a section re-roof. So HVAC and control systems. The HVAC systems in most of our buildings are still original, and they are in need of significant maintenance upgrades. The control systems in particular are at the end of life cycle and are failing. These control systems are crucial as they allow us to automate building operations, including temperature regulation and scheduling. Without these updates, we risk increased energy inefficiencies and reduced comfort for our students and staff. Upgrading the HVAC and control systems will be a key priority to ensuring reliable and efficient operation moving forward. And that one has a pretty rough, robust price tag as well. So some of the other things that are, areas of concern are with about $200 to $300 million price tag is security and technology infrastructure. That involves like adding IT server space and redundancy, interior and exterior upgrades. That's like stuff like painting, drywall. We have a lot of schools with demountables out there that I know are problematic, and we'd like to get rid of those and go to stud and gyp. Tuck pointing, windows, building envelope is all stuff that, is not, it's just need to be kind of taken care of eventually. Plumbing, again, all original and age of building needs a building and need replacement. Electrical, we're looking at replacement of various distribution components, panels, breakers, pull new wires. Low voltage and sound systems, we have master clocks, PA systems, cameras, again. Lighting, we should really be converting to LED. There is a bulb ban that will start in effect this January. Is last year, they're gonna stop making them, I think, and then we have 1 year to stop selling them. So we gotta get out in front of that, but we have some thoughts on that. Parking lot and some driveways, asphalt and concrete is very expensive to repair, and I know you guys get a lot of heartburn over the potholes and some of the various driveways and areas. So then athletic fields, and that's not the turfs, that's talking about stadiums, retaining walls, bleachers, bathrooms, and concession stands. Some of those have some significant end of life cycle issues. And then pools, but we'll be talking about that here in a bit.
So we wanted to just paint a picture of what the future holds. Also let you know why prioritization is so important, because certainly the needs outweigh the funding over the next 10 years unless something changes dramatically. So that's our responsibility, is to continue to bring this information to you, make recommendations based on board priorities, and then how we have learned to make priorities based on our collaborations with our school buildings and our school leaders and district leadership. But we do have challenges facing us as we look forward into the future, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we're looking out 10 to 20 years and what we need to do. So with that, before we, no pun intended, dive into pools, we would take any comments or questions from the school board.
Thank you for the presentation. Any comments or questions from the board? Director Simon?
Okay. Thanks, Zach. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the work you do. You guys do an awesome job managing that. When I see, in my head, I added up $650 million over the next 10 years. That's wonderful to hear. But thank you for managing all of that. And on the, it is wonderful to see an end come to the 2017 bond. Again, yes, I agree with you. Thank you to the voters of Anoka-Hennepin for approving that. Hopefully they all have been able to get into our buildings and see our fields and things like that on what they supported, because it's wonderful for our students and our whole community. Beyond you folks and your team managing that, building administration was heavily leaned upon during that time, and I just want to thank them too, because that was sometimes outside of their comfort zone to help manage those things, and I think they did a great job along with you, your leadership, so thank you.
Can I just respond? I really thank you for bringing that up. As someone who came up through education and went to principal school and so forth, managing a construction project is not something that you're taught. And so you're right, our leaders were really faced with a lot of challenging decision-making on the fly. And shout out too to building supervisors and custodial staff who are on the ground, oftentimes dealing with multiple vendors doing some pretty heavy work, and just being our eyes and ears on the ground. But you're right, it's a pretty stressful situation for many of them. One thing too, I want to remind you, there is a board briefing attached to this. On there, we listed all the funding sources for all the projects, and if you have any questions about any of those projects, please let us know. But you'll see that most of them have multiple funding sources. That's a part of the strategy that Ben was talking about when we try to figure out how we're going to pay for things in the most effective way.
Good to go. Any other thoughts or comments from board members? All right, well, I appreciate the presentation as well. It's one of the least controversial things that's presented, and
we're trying.
It's nice to see the update, so thank you.
Okay.
All right, this was a board update and does not require board action. So we are going to move on to our next agenda item, which is item 9C, facilities, pool facility utilization and repairs. Welcome again, Greg Cole and Ben Martinson.
All right, thank you. So back in June, we provided you an update on the condition of our pools district-wide. As you know, the pools tend to be pretty expensive things. And some of our pools have been around a long time, and they've actually done quite well for decades. So that's a celebration, I would say. But many of them are reaching their end of life. At that time, we made a recommendation to pull Oakview's pool offline because we were unable to continue to keep it limping along the existing system. Our vendors were no longer willing to do the repairs that we were asking for. And so we were faced with a $750,000 to $1 million upgrade to the HVAC system that supports that pool. So a decision was made to kind of put that on hold until the fall. With the looming budget cuts is kind of something that, you know, was a part of the consideration for that type of an expenditure. During that process, we did make a recommendation to include keeping Oakview Middle School offline. And I do want to make a distinction between, I think the language was closed, and that's probably not language I should have used. I probably should have said offlined, because closed kind of maybe implies you fill it in and get rid of it and it's gone forever, as opposed to offline, which is the condition that pool was in from 2001 to 2018 when it was closed or offline during that time. So the main thing there was to take it offline, not do the repairs, and then we would essentially realize a savings of $100,000 a year for maintenance and upkeep of a pool. So just a little history with regard to our pools. Anoka Middle School, Fred Moore Pool, and Northdale Pool are really the biggest facilities. They've been around for nearly 50 years, both of them. And for the last 24 plus years for competition, Andover High School and Anoka High School competed at, and still continue to compete at, the Fred Moore Pool, and Blaine High School and Coon Rapids High School compete at the Northdale Pool. Champlain Bark High School competes at Jackson's Pool. While Oakview was open for a short period of time, Oakview Middle School opened in 1996 and Andover High School opened in 2002. So there was a short period of time where that pool was used for practice facility for Andover High School swim and dive. It has not been used as a competition facility, only a practice facility, because it's not really large enough to accommodate maybe more than one team. I know I talked with Eric Latola, the athletic director at Andover, and they thought maybe they could try something, but essentially most pool meets involve a lot more swimmers and teams than that. And that facility just wasn't big enough to accommodate a swim meet, which is why Andover has always competed at Fred Moore. But it did serve for some time as a practice facility. Mainly, the bulk of that was between 2018, when it was resurrected for use, until last year, when we ended up taking it offline again. Jackson Middle School, as I said, is used for competition and practice for Champlain Park High School. And then Roosevelt is primarily used by community education, although during this past year, while Oakview has been offline for Andover practice, Andover and Anoka high schools use that facility 1 day a week for practices, different days. So the biggest pool repairs that we're facing in addition to Oakview are really at Northdale and Fred Moore. Northdale, we're anticipating fairly soon. It's still making it, but it's looking more and more like this is something we're going to have to do in the next year or two, a $2 to $2.5 million upgrade. And then the Fred Moore pool is going to require a $4.5 to $5 million upgrade. And again, you can see the current uses for those two facilities. The P plus C there is practice plus competition, what those are used for. But both of these pools, the reason why we're recommending that we're keeping those pools going is they can accommodate both practices and meets because of their size and scope. In terms of Oakview, as I mentioned, the issue that we face at this point is an estimated $750,000 to $1 million repair cost. It is currently offline, so this season, Andover Swim and Dive has been, at least in the fall season here, was practicing at Anoka Middle School with Anoka High School's team. They worked out a schedule. And then, as I said, 1 day a week at Roosevelt for both those schools. The annual cost of maintaining to keep the pool operating would be $100,000. And the pool was offline for 17 years before it was reopened in 2018. And as I said, you see where it's been used for practices for Andover High School. So we see a couple of options. Obviously, we're open to other options. If board members have other options you'd like us to consider. But it seems to boil down to two. One would be to repair the OMS pool and place it back online and essentially keep the $100,000 that had been included in the reductions out of those reductions. Because the $1 million isn't really a reduction when it's a one-time cost. The $100,000 is the ongoing cost in terms of a reduction. Or option two is to keep the OMS pool offline and monitor enrollment and LTFN funding. The reason I say enrollment, the part I haven't mentioned, is we did get a report from Hazel Reinhardt a few months ago with regard to enrollment projections for the school district. There's a few schools that we're keeping an eye on. 3 of them today were taken offline for the rest of the year for open enrollment because of just enrollment pressures on Champlain Park, Blaine, and Dayton Elementary School. But Oakview is another school that she noted in her report that her prediction was that the enrollment would jump above 1,300 students, I think, within the next couple of years. We don't necessarily have any indication that that's going to happen in that time frame, but we're keeping an eye on it. If it were to exceed its current capacity, this is a space we were looking at as a possibility to accommodate up to 7 classrooms. If we were able to do that, it would be about half the cost of putting on an addition that would accommodate the same 7 classrooms. So that's part of the reason that you know, we just want to bring up looking at that space as taking it offline, essentially kicking the can down the road a little bit to see what enrollment does, and before making a decision about doing those major repairs. So we are asking for action from you tonight. We are recommending option 2, which would take the Oakview pool offline and back to its status from 2001 to 2018. This would postpone the decision to invest that money in the HVAC replacement, provides time to determine whether the pool space would be better suited to accommodate a potential enrollment increases, and then we would realize those $100,000 savings as part of the budget reductions that were brought up at the November 25th meeting. So with that, we take any comments or questions from the board.
Thank you for the presentation. Board members, are there any questions? Director Adet.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, just some comments. The decision to take a pool offline or close it or whatever it is it's a difficult one because yeah, you look at it on the one hand and it's expensive to maintain these pools. There's huge price tags on all of them, but then they are also sort of long-term assets that we've through bond or whatever we've placed out in the community, and they are utilized to some degree by, I'm just going to say, the community at large, right? Not every one of us. I've never. Well, actually, I have been in our pools. It was a long time ago when I learned to swim at Fredmore. So I guess that's my point, right? I mean, and you can easily, I think, make a strong case to, forego the expense and to, offset some of the ongoing costs. It would be great to do it. You could probably do that with any number of things related to our facilities or to the activities that we make available to our students. Many of which come at a huge investment, and I think it's kind of dangerous for us to. Dangerous is not a good word. I don't like the idea of us comparing one activity to another and its associated costs and expense. And I mean, it's great whenever we can have something like the turf fields, which we can say, hey, look how many kids benefit from it, right? They do it in Phi-Ed. Multiple sports play on them. Those are awesome when you can do that, but not all of the types of facilities that are required to provide the broad scope of activities that we provide they're not all possible to do that, and I think we need to recognize that. So I as kind of challenging as it is to come up with the funds to repair the pool and put it back online and to maintain it and operate it year over year, I'm also, based on the presentation you guys just gave, super confident that if we asked you to do it, you could do it. And in fact, I know you could do it. And so for me, that's going to be my ask, is that we fix the pool and put it back online.
Any other questions or comments? Director Langenfeld, I believe I saw first.
Just a question or a point of consideration. Am I accurate in assuming that you would address the needs of the competition pools where we can have both competition and practice? So Northdale and that is how many millions of dollars? Is that 5 and 2.5, right?
Right. It's 6.5 to 7.5.
So they would take priority, and this particular allocation of resources coming out of the entire, where does the resource come specifically? There isn't the pool fund, I wouldn't assume.
No. So it's LTFM funds.
It is
we
the
are
LTFM,
able to use, yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
So everything we talked about earlier is all in that same, so roofs, parking lots, and all of those.
Most, as long as it's repair or replacement, yes.
Right.
That's the
Repair,
criteria for
right.
LTFM.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
Of existing
Okay.
infrastructure.
Thank you for that clarification.
Director Hochman.
Thank you. One thing that I think about when I think of pools kind of goes back to Director Audette's point, in that he did take swim lessons at Fredmore, as have many of our community members. And that's a really important thing, in my opinion, in the state of Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, to offer our community the opportunity to get their kids swimming lessons. And whenever we take a pool offline, that's one less place that our kids can learn how to swim. And that's just, every year in the summer, we hear those tragic reports of kids drowning in our lakes and rivers. And every time, you know, you listed out leased to swim schools, and Roosevelt is for aquatics. So certainly these pools are being used for swim teams, but also those opportunities, the more we can provide our community the ability to teach their kids how to swim, I think that's just an important life skill and really goes to the root of what the school district is about, is creating educational opportunities. So I think that's an important thing to consider. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
My general take is I like the recommendation. I think it would be great to get the pool up and running, you know, when we can, probably in the midst of the budget cuts that we just had and we'll probably have ongoing. It'll have to be thoughtfully worked into just how to do it. So at least for the time being, I'm perfectly fine with the recommendation. So those are my thoughts. Superintendent McIntyre.
Yeah, I was just going to add, thank you. I was just going to add that what the team will do is you get an annual LTFM plan. They'll just have to reprioritize. There's more projects and funds, but there always is, right? So they just need direction. If you want to invest in not only this pool, but other pools, they need the courtesy of just being able to begin to plan ahead for the costs that you saw there, and they'll just reshuffle that 10-year plan. Now, it's not, I make it sound easy, because I know it's not, because there's requirements and there's timelines and there's things that can't wait, right?
Correct.
But that's, I think, as Director Audette said, they'll rework the puzzle and the dollars are in the LTFM budget. That is not operating in the same way we were looking at people when we made cuts earlier a couple weeks ago, other than the operating costs, that small operating piece. So the sooner the board's clear on that, then the sooner they can get to work on reorganizing those projects, right, and those timelines.
Director Simon.
Thanks, Zach. Maybe a question for you. When you said you're okay with the recommendation, did you mean the administrator's recommendations or Matt's recommendation?
The one to keep it closed for the time being, but
keep it closed.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Clarification. So I think that if I'm remembering back the original presentations, also in addition to this one, it was. I think you guys did a great job, a thoughtful job and a detailed job in looking at if it's best to keep it offline for now or bring it back on board for now. And I think about, so it has been offline, so I don't think we're going to, certainly the opportunity if you opened it for swimming lessons might be there. I'm not sure that this pool used that, but certainly not this year as it's offline. And then I think about our specific schools and Blaine and Coon Rapids have always shared a pool, right? And I think that Andover and Anoka used to share a pool until it was back online and now are sharing a pool again. So that seems equitable. Champlain Park gets their own. That's kind of nice being on that side of the river, I guess. But but it was, I thought it was thoughtful, and I will go with that recommendation, but the recommendation to keep it closed at this time. But I agree that when you take the step of losing a pool like we did at Coon Rapids Middle School, you never get that pool back. So I'm not at the point of saying and I know you're not asking that, but I'm just saying for everyone, I'm not at the point of saying I want to lose the pool for sure. I'm okay keeping it offline for now as we continue to analyze that.
Can I just interject that obviously if that were the decision, we wouldn't do anything without coming back to you first. So, yeah. I think that's obvious, but I just wanted to reassure everybody that, yeah.
Director Hoekman.
Just one more comment to attach to that. A thing about the pools is that some of our pools are old and then they have issues. And so when we have only 3 running pools, that really affects the competition possibilities for any pool. I remember probably 5 years ago or so, Fred Moore Pool had some serious filtering issues, and that was closed. And then those 2 teams had to find new ways to practice. So My recommendation, what I hope that we can consider is to actually open the pool and get it up and running so that the next season we have some more flexibility and the community can look for opportunities to get their kids some aquatics education.
Director Adet.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I guess I thought I am clear. I also want to do that. I think the reprioritization that we're talking about could take place now to open it. We spoke to some of the different sharing that's gone on. That has been a challenge for the swim teams in both of the communities as it is now. We certainly heard a lot from those who participate in that, which is logical. Those are going to be the people that are going to contact us because they have, currently the most knowledge of sort of what the situation is. But I think that Director Hoekman made a good point, given that we're looking at 2 major repairs on a couple of our other pools. Now you'll be down. Those pools will be down for some period of time as well. So I don't know. I guess I'm just looking for an opportunity to see if we can't get that pool going again. And then I had somebody just contact me today, said there is at least one local swimming type, I don't know if they offer lessons or what, who is looking for space to do that. And, that could offset, we don't know how much, we don't even know if they would want to do it at our pool, but it just, when you don't have a working pool, you can't really evaluate those options. Pre-COVID, we talked about, we opened this pool, we found somebody who wanted to do it. It fell apart during the pandemic. Perhaps we're back to a point where if we had a pool to offer, we would be able to turn it into something that could be used by more people through lessons or otherwise. So, yeah, I guess I would like to strongly advocate that we do that. Open the pool back up, fix it, get it working again.
Any other thoughts or questions from board members? All right. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation as presented in Appendix O? The recommendation, I believe, keep it offline for now, pending further conversations.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Simon. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Director Langenfeld. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, will all those in favor say aye? Aye. Will all those opposed say nay?
Nay.
All right, the motion passes with 4 in favor and 2 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we are nearing our last board agenda item. Item 10, board correspondence and communication. Members, this is your opportunity to share happenings in your community, report on committee assignments, or other items of interest. Does anyone have anything to share? So I guess I'll speak. Well, it wasn't just me. It was a number of board members. We attended the ribbon cutting ceremony at the team site and the Alley Plus Avenue store that was moved over to Sandburg Regional High School last week. So that was pretty neat to attend that and just see what they had set up there. And then as I had mentioned previously, I also got to attend the MSBA Delegate Assembly. Thank you, Director Langenfeld, for inviting me to that. So that was, I think that was, well, I didn't know much about the MSBA. Now I know quite a bit more, so I just really appreciate the invite. Director DeShane.
Thank you. Just want to share a quick thank you to really all of our athletic organizations across the district. There was a student death in Champlain Park's community, the hockey community, and at each sporting event, district schools, Andover specifically, really came together with the Champlain Park community to honor that student and show respect. I think it was just a really good show of the kind of community spirit we can feel as an entire district when something happens in one of our school sites. So thank you.
Anybody else? Director Langenfeld.
Should be repaired. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. Just a comment too. I was able to attend the AMSD meeting on Friday. I heard a great presentation around assessments and what is measured counts, and Eden Prairie's got a model out there that extends far beyond the MCAs, and so took a deep dive into that. So that may be something we want to peek a little further at as we talk about the metrics that we're interested in moving forward as well, to measure and monitor more carefully and closely. In addition to that, we heard a budget forecast, and I know there's more coming out on that, and I'm assuming they'll be able to see that recording if to hear that as well. It's not rosy, and so just to reference that, and Director Arco also talked about, we heard a similar forecast at the School Board Association as well. And then the final thing is, I had the privilege to attend a Champlain Park High School basketball game. It was the evening that the student was being honored, and I also had the opportunity to watch all the students participate during this game and honoring the student. In addition to that, the alumni women's basketball team also came out and played, and our own co-chair, Co-Chair DeShane, was part of that team, and most of all, I think she impressed her daughter in terms of taking the pictures. I expected her to play well, and she did. So anyway, it was great. So thank you for that.
Anyone else? All right. We are near, sorry, got lost here. So the last agenda item is item 11, to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Director Simon. Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Audette. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will all in favor say aye? Aye. Any opposed say nay. With 6 in favor and 0 opposed, we are adjourned.